Chapter 116, Een Splinters. What Mo thought of the Een beads. Aren't the Een beads made of Een energy? The Een energy in the Een beads was even more condensed than the Een energy of the Een fiends. Mo became more excited the more he thought about it. He took out a Een bead and started to study it. Consciousness was extremely sensitive to other consciousness. When Mo inspected it before, he had clearly understood the consciousness inside the gray Een splinter. However, the Een bead was different than the Een energy surrounding the Een fiend. The condensation of the Een energy in the Een bead far surpassed the Een energy surrounding the Een fiend. He still needed to slowly figure out how to use his consciousness. He referred to this gray splinter as Een splinter. Mo sunk into his thoughts. He wasn't afraid of finding things out. What he was afraid of was not finding a direction. Now that he found a direction, he was halfway there. Pu Yao curiously looked at Mo thoughtfully as he silently floated forward. Mo unconsciously followed him. Mo didn't notice that the road under his feet was heading down. A dark smile came onto the corner of Pu Yao's mouth. Squeak! Mo was suddenly shaken and was frightened out of his thoughts. He raised his head and saw a Een fiend heading towards him. He was familiar with the routine and did not panic. He threw out a formation disc with path confusion formation inscribed in it. It was easy to make a path confusion formation, and it didn't need much in terms of quality of the materials. So Mo had made more of them than anything else. The 100 treasure pouch at his waist was extremely heavy, completely filled with all kinds of low-level formation discs. If it wasn't that his Vajra Profound Sutra had reached the level of golden flesh clothing, and his strength had improved, just the formation discs would be enough to crush him. As expected, the Een fiend stopped in its steps. But quickly, the Een fiend surprised Mo greatly. The Een energy surrounding the Een fiend moved restlessly and 3 gray Een splinters suddenly shot into the surroundings. The path confusion formation that had just formed was like a wet piece of paper and was torn to pieces. Only now did Mo notice the Een energy surrounding this Een fiend was thicker than the previous Een fiends. As the Een energy was extremely condensed, the gray Een energy looked black. Damn it! This Een fiend wasn't a normal one. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw that Pu Yao had retreated to one side, a smirk on his face. Mo didn't have to think to know that it was Pu Yao's fault. But there was no time to think about it now. After this Een fiend shot out 3 Een splinters, it actually was not affected. It was completely immune to the weakening that the other Een fiends had when they shot out Een splinters. Mo couldn't help but have a bad feeling. There was only things like path confusion formations left in the 100 treasures pouch. He had completely used up the good formation discs like the dragon tying formation. Responding panically, Mo barely managed to dodge the Een fiend. The cold wind stirred by the Een fiend brushing past made his hair stand on end. Before he could distance himself, shoo shoo shoo, 3 Een splinters suddenly shot out of the Een fiend. Too close. Unable to dodge in time, Mo could only start up the turtle shell shield of the Moonwater Black Turtle armor. Pew! The hard turtle shield was like a fragile bubble, dying at the same time as one of the Een splinters. The other 2 Een splinters directly headed for his face and vital areas. Mo's soul fled. At the time of life and death, he focused all his attention, all his Ling power was channeled, all of his consciousness was furiously moving. He didn't have the time to summon his flying sword. Didn't have the time to take out the seal soldier. Didn't have the time to take out the Een fire bead. Right now, 3 was only one thing he could use, Vajra Profound Sutra. Hi! Mo shouted. Golden light flashed across his entire body and then suddenly dimmed. The light came fast and left even faster, as though it flashed by. After the golden light, Mo's entire body seemed to be made from dark gold. His eyes were widened angrily, but there was no expression on his face. He seemed like the Vajrapani coming down to the earth, angry yet indifferent. Without any attention to spare, Zuo reached out with his two dark gold palms, swiping at the two yin splinters. What one would find strange was that his hands moved extremely slowly, but a feeling of pressure formed. The formation on the vambraces, 1000 Kati. At the same time, the third-grade wind travel boots silently glowed. Zuo's hands caught the yin splinters. Slap slap. Two clear explosions. The yin splinters seemed to have been hammered, exploding into yin energy, and spreading out. Zuo didn't end up well either, his hands trembling, his fingers in heart-rending pain. The Vajra Profound Sutra, in his body almost collapsed, but he knew this was not the time to take a break and gritted his teeth to persist. The third-grade wind travel boots lit up. Wind travel, and movement, both started. Zuo was like a ghost. After a string of turns, he distanced himself from the yin fiend. Panting heavily, Zuo stared fixedly at the yin fiend in front of him. The dangerous changes that had just occurred frightened him. He didn't even know how he managed to get through it. His heart was beating hard like a heavy drum. He had been too nervous before, and there hadn't been time for him to be afraid. Now that he had the attention to spare, he had enormous fear, and terror once again took over his body. Such a strong yin fiend. The yin fiend seemed to have detected Zuo's power. This time, it didn't charge at him, and maintained the standoff with Zuo. The yin energy that had been moving around its body stopped, motionless. Zuo didn't dare to slack off now. The yin fiend in front of his eyes was like a fully drawn bow. Just the slightest bit of outside force would cause it to attack. Zuo's hand touched the water drop sword, the terror inside instantly decreasing by a lot. His heart slowly resumed calm. He suddenly understood a little bit the meaning of the flying sword for sword show. However, this was not the time to think about those things. He needed to first kill of this damned yin fiend in front of him. With his flying sword in hand, Zuo's confidence instantly rose. He didn't hesitate, and didn't hold anything back as he attacked. 7 whirlpools. 7 whirlpools was made up of countless sword energies and securely surrounded the yin fiend. The cold energy brimming as the sword energies crisscrossed. The yin fiend that had been preparing started its attack. Inside the yin energy it had condensed, a circle of yin splinters shot out at the surroundings with it at the center like a gray flower blooming. The yin splinters and 7 whirlpools smashed into each other. Bam bam bam. A string of explosions sounded like fireworks lit up, ringing in the ears. The 7 sword energies whirlpools were destroyed in an instant, but after the whirlpools that had been made up of those sword energy was torn apart, the power actually increased instead. After the 7 sword energy whirlpools broke, the area that they surrounded instantly turned into a mess, extremely disordered and chaotic. In the chaos, countless pieces made out of sword energies flew up and down like countless blades, furiously cutting and slicing. The pitiful yin fiend was in the center of the chaos and instantly was cut by the countless sword energies. Zuo was joyful. He hadn't thought that 7 whirlpools would increase in power after being broken. The yin energy around this yin fiend was extremely dense, and the wounds inflicted by the sword energies were more serious. Looking at the yin fiend struggling in the disorder, Zuo's heart relaxed slightly. Only now was he at an advantage. This yin fiend was really strong. The yin fiend that he had destroyed with one sword blow and the yin fiend in front of him now was not on the same level. Suddenly, the yin fiend gave a piercing yell. The yin energy surrounding its body suddenly shrunk inward and started to gather. Zuo was shocked. The power of the chaos had started to falter. Even those broken sword energies had lost their sharpness. The yin energy surrounding the yin fiend shrunk, its body becoming even more concentrated. The sword energies, when they sliced it, gave cracking sounds as though they were cutting leather. It knew a move like this. Zuo was dumbstruck at the endless moves this yin fiend had. He couldn't help but think it was bad. Even though he didn't know what the yin fiend would do next, he decided to attack first using another 7 whirlpools. 7 sword energy whirlpools once again appeared surrounding the Yin Fiend. The fragments of sword energy that had lost power were instantly sucked in by the 7 whirlpools. The 7 whirlpools instantly grew to twice its size. Under the high speed of revolution, the hissing became even more clear, shocking to the soul. Between the 7 whirlpools, the Yin Fiend was still compressing Yin energy, not paying attention to anything else. At this time, its body was the size of a bamboo basket, entirely gray-black like a soft ball of ink. Zuemo gritted his teeth and forcefully revered his Ling force. Break! Boom! 7 gigantic whirlpools simultaneously exploded, countless pieces of sword energies shooting into the surroundings. The place that the Yin Fiend was at was the densest place of sword energy fragments, and the place most severely affected. In that instant, hundreds of sword energy fragments bombed the Yin Fiend's body. Pew pew pew. Countless ripples appeared on the Yin Fiend's inky black body, the Yin Fiend's body shuddered. A stream of blood came out of the corner of Zuomo's mouth. When he had reversed the flow of his Ling power, he had injured his channels. However, his eyes were excited. This 7 whirlpools, it was definitely the strongest 7 whirlpools he had ever done. So there were times where the breaking of a sword move could increase its power. He seemed to understand something. The harm the second round of 7 whirlpools was great to the Yin Fiend. It could be seen from the stability of its body. Before, its compressed body had been like a ball of sticky ink, floating steadily in the yar. After enduring a storm of countless sword energy fragments, its inky body seemed to show signs of instability. Occasionally, a Yin energy drop would drip down from its body like ink. However, before the droplet landed on the flow, the Yin energy would dissipate in the air. The Yin Fiend was completely infuriated this time. Zuemo could clearly feel its anger, the anger passed on by its consciousness. At this moment, a little ball of inky Yin energy left the body of the Yin Fiend. What surprised Zuemo was that this little ball of Yin energy did not dissipate in the air after it separated. Suddenly, Zuemo's heart jumped. He could feel the consciousness of the Yin Fiend was burrowing into this little ball of Yin energy. Yin Splinter. Thinking about the great power of the previous Yin Splinters, and looking at the inky black ball of Yin energy, if the Yin Splinter was made from such dense Yin energy, the power. Zuemo shuddered in fear. What should he use? Li Water Burning Heavens? Or Seal Soldiers? Or Yin Fire Bead? Yin Fire Bead. Zuemo suddenly thought that he had been thinking about using the Yin energy of the Yin bead to create a Yin Splinter. Hadn't he been just having a headache over the Yin energy of the Yin bead being too dense and hard to control with his consciousness? He stared at the thick Yin energy ball that was floating in front of the Yin Fiend, concentrating on feeling the transformation it was undergoing. Zuemo suddenly had a feeling. The Yin Fiend in front of him was the best teacher, teaching him how to use the Yin energy and consciousness to make a Yin Splinter step by step. He took out a Yin bead, copied the Yin Fiend and started to slowly feed his consciousness into the Yin bead. Watching from the side, Puya was stunned as he gaped at Zuemo. Chapter 117, What happened even though it was the first time he was using his consciousness in this way, but Zuemo's spiritual control was much stronger than this Yin Fiend. He hadn't processed all those materials for nothing. His spirit was much stronger than the Yin Fiend in the first place, and his control was the same. It was just that he hadn't know how to use it. Seeing how the Yin Fiend in front of him was using its consciousness, Zuemo felt that the paper on the window easily broke. One burst of consciousness, shaped like a needle, burrowed into the Yin bead. But the Yin energy inside the Yin bead was too dense. This bit of consciousness was too weak. Zuemo wasn't someone that stuck to rote. He quickly separated a few more strands of consciousness and merged them together before it was just able to enter the Yin bead. Once his consciousness entered the Yin bead, Zuemo immediately felt an astounding change. He seemed to be situated in a gray world. Dense Yin energy was floating all around him, cold and strange. Zuemo's mind became blurred. Only when he felt the hardness coming from his feet did he suddenly wake. The consciousness that had entered the Een bead had come from him. The feelings that it transferred back had conflicted with his own consciousness, and created this momentary daze suddenly. It was complicated to describe, but it was only the flick of a finger. A inky black Een splinter appeared in front of the Een fiend. As the Een splinter also formed, Zwa-Mo felt a terrifying presence and became wary. Luckily, his own Een splinter had formed at the same time. It was strange, but the Een fiend still kept its original shape. However, it turned from gray to crystal clear without any imperfections. Even though he had copied everything the Een fiend had done, but Zwa-Mo still was not very confident. He emboldened his heart and threw out this clear crystal bead. The Een fiend sent out the Een splinter at the exact same time. The inky black Een splinter moved, and howls started. It was like the crying of infants, the Een energy rippling. Seeing such a strong presence, Zwa-Mo became even less confident. His right hand holding the water drop sword, he forced himself to remain calm. He decided, the moment it turned bad, he would definitely use Li water burning heavens even if it meant he would be wounded. He had already been injured before when he had reversed channeled his Ling power. If he did Li water burning heavens, his injuries would worsen, but he didn't have any better choices. Only now did he realize that what he trusted the most was Li water burning heavens. Pu Yao had spoke of the grand power of the Een fire bead, but he had never used it before, and he had almost failed in the process of making the Een bead. Zwa-Mo didn't know if its power would be weakened due to that. He had personally experienced the power of the seal soldier, and it was a good thing, but it took time to recite the spell for this thing, and to cast a spell. If he met an emergency, he wouldn't have the time to use it. There was only Li water burning heavens. As long as he had the water drop sword, he could cast it at any time. He couldn't help but grimace. It was not hard to cast Li water burning heavens, but it was limited by his cultivation. If he was the least bit uncareful, he could be wounded. He decided that after he returned, he would definitely study some more life-saving moves. Readying himself, Zwa-Mo threw all his thoughts to the back of his mind, all of his attention fixed on the inky black Een splinter. The clear crystal bead soundlessly drew the most normal projectile curve. There was no sound, no presence. The presence of the black Een splinter was astounding. All the Een energy in the surroundings seemed to be attracted, a cold wind blowing, causing Zwa-Mo's clothes to flap. It also cooled down Zwa-Mo's heart. The howls that came from every direction, the dark and coldness that entered from every pore. If it was a person with a weaker mental state, they probably wouldn't even have the thought of fighting under this presence. In the corner, Pu Yao watched, stunned, as the bead and splinter hit. Poof! There wasn't the imagined explosion. There was no light. There was only a clear sound like a bubble popping. But with this clear sound, the ever-present howls instantly stopped. That bone-aching dark cold suddenly dissipated. Holding the water drop sword, already prepared to fight for his life, Zwa-Mo was stunned in his spot. After the hit, the crystal bead had turned into a clear ball of light, and that astoundingly powerful black Een splinter had actually been melted by this clear light, disappearing in the blink of an eye. The still glowing ball headed for the Een fiend. It was like the Een fiend was paralyzed, not moving as it allowed the ball of light to hit its body. The Een fiend didn't make a sound as it was hit. It quickly melted and disappeared like a snowman, along with the ball of light. There was nothing remaining. The instant the ball of light disappeared, Zwa-Mo's mind blanked. After a while, Zwa-Mo focused as he looked dumbly at the empty ground. What had happened? The instant the ball of light and the Een fiend had disappeared at the same time, Pu Yao's pupil had suddenly shrunk from behind Zwa-Mo, but it quickly recovered. What is this? Zwa-Mo turned around and stammered a question. He had thought of many different results, but what happened had definitely not been one of them. Pu Yao said disdainfully, blind cat bumping into a dead mouse. Zwa-Mo definitely wouldn't accept such an irresponsible explanation from Pu Yao. He took out another Een bead, added a bit of consciousness to it. After the yin bead became a crystal bead again, he threw it out. Poof! The crystal bead hit the ground, a light flashed, and then it disappeared, not even leaving a hole on the ground. Other than his mind blanking for an instantly, there was no response. Zhuo Mo was dumbstruck. Ha! Pu Yao roared with laughter. Was it really just luck? Zhuo Mo didn't believe it. Or did this thing only have an effect against yin fiends? We finally managed to encounter a somewhat good yin fiend and you got rid of it. Pu Yao seemed to be disinterested and threw out a few jingshi. Zhuo Mo felt the scene in front of his eyes flash and they were back in the stone room. After returning, Pu Yao went back into the sea of consciousness. He sat down again on the gravestone and closed his eye. Zhuo Mo felt that this guy was probably full and was now digesting it all. Only after returning to the familiar stone room did Zhuo Mo feel the heavy exhaustion. He had spent a whole day with his mind on high alert, especially when he had encountered the last few yin fiends. He had spent a lot of energy. Not caring that the ground was cold and wet, he fell asleep on the rock. Don't forget. Even in death, you must not forget. As Zhuo Mo dreamed, a warm green light rose at his chest, turning into a thin stream and spread into his limbs and organs. Pu Yao sat on the gravestone, coldly staring at the faraway space. The sword test conference was full of excitement. Young experts that lit up the eyes of the audience continuously appeared. The special energy that young expert had caused this sword test conference to be full of emotion. Most of the young cultivators were heavy on the offense and light on the defense. A common scene of the sword test conference was flames and light spreading all around. This was just the preliminary sword test conference. More and more young Xiuzhe were rushing to get to Dongfu. One by one, unfamiliar and unknown names quickly became familiar. Zhuo Mo opened his eyes and climbed up from the wet and cold ground. He stretched out his limbs and felt that his strength had recovered. He looked at the surroundings. The stone room was cold and silent. Without him noticing, he had lost his dependence on the Ling vein in the rock room. The vein was now used to make Dan, 1, because it was quite enough and no one would disturb him, and 2, was the Ling spring was a very good place for the water method. He glanced at the Ling Dan in the Ling spring and put the water drop sword into the Ling spring to nurture it. This method didn't produce any visible effects but it could change the quality of the water drop sword from the ground up. After finishing this, he coiled his legs and sat down, sinking into his thoughts. He had gained a lot from his trip to the sword cave. How to use the formation discs, the effects of each formation disc, stealing how to use the yin splinter from the yin fiends. Even though he didn't really understand the result of what he had copied using the yin bead, but he knew that it worked. It was just that he didn't understand it. Other than that, his biggest discovery was that he found he was lacking life-saving measures. The coordination of low-level moves could have power, but the premise was that it required preparations for many situations. If he suddenly encountered danger, he basically had no time to consider how to group together those spells. Other than that, the seal soldier could only be used once and it took a long time for it to activate. That meant it was fated not to be useful in emergencies. The only thing he could rely upon was the water drop sword. However, just relying on the water drop sword, he was not secure. A true sword shio would have absolute confidence in their flying sword and sword scripture, like Wei Xing Xixiang. But this definitely did not include Zhuo Mo. He never thought of himself as a pure sword shio and had no basis for such self-confidence. His gaze landed on the yin fire bead. He had endured great hardship and trouble the last time when he made the yin fire bead. He naturally didn't bear to use up the one yin fire bead that he had gone to great trouble to make. He had never been clear about the power of the yin fire bead. After he had processed so many materials in Dongfu, his control of the stalagmite fire had gone up a level. Adding on the aid of the fire formation, he had the confidence to make a finished yin fire bead. It was just that he hadn't thought about this at all. In this trip to the sword cave, after the dangers he had encountered, he deeply felt the importance of life-saving measures. At a crucial time, if he had one or two tricks up his sleeve, it would be a completely different outcome. Zhuemo went to an unpopulated mountain valley. This pace was more than 100 kilometers from Wukong Mountain. The old trees in the mountain valley reached for the sky, giving him a great covering. The Yin bead had put him in extreme danger. He knew deeply that this item could not be seen and was even more careful. After finding a position to stand, he took out the Yin fire bead. The cloud-like patterns on the bead was extremely beautiful. In the Yin fire bead chapter, there were all kinds of strange and weird ways to use the Yin fire bead. Because he hadn't had the Yin fire bead before, Zhuemo hadn't really studied them. This time, he decided to really take a good look. He quickly picked out a finger spell called Finger Throw. It fulfilled Zhuemo's demands, simple finger moves, and pretty good power. Alone, he stayed in the mountain valley and practiced Finger Throw. Finger Throw was not complicated. It was constructed out of 5 finger motions. However, the Ling power manipulations related to it was slightly complex. Thankfully, even though Zhuemo's cultivation was limited, but his control of Ling power was extremely outstanding. The degree of difficulty was just a minor problem for him. After 2 hours, he had pretty much grasped the finger throw. 4 hours later, he was extremely familiar. Feeling that it was enough, he stopped his practice. He was extremely curious, using the finger throw to cast the Yin fire bead, what would the power be? Chapter 118. Between happiness and grief, the Yin fire bead flew forward from Zhuemo's hand, turning into a milky white thread of fire, and hit a broad tree that would need 7 or 8 people to circle it. The milky white flame spread on the ancient tree at an astounding speed. In a few seconds, the milky white flame had covered the entire tree, not even leaving behind a leaf. The tree, which had been bursting with vitality just seconds ago, was now lifeless. As the milky white flame passed, the green leaves instantly turned a chilling white. Quickly, the entire tree was white, and not a bit of green to be seen. The white old tree spread a pressuring chill. Snowflakes started to stir up around the surroundings. The white leaves started to break off from the tip, like it was being weathered, falling down. A burst of wind blew, the snowflakes danced, and countless white fragments left the old tree, carried by the wind. The enormous ancient tree, in front of Zhuemo, turned to a cloud of white dust and disappeared in the wind. Zhuemo was deeply shocked by what happened in front of him. Returning to the little yard, his mind was still slightly dazed. The Yin fire bead was astoundingly powerful, as expected. If it had hit a person, Zhuemo guessed that even those Ningmai Xiuzhou wouldn't be able to block it. For a last resort life-saving measure, the more powerful it was the better. After that, he put all his energy into creating Yin fire beads. With the aid of the 3-turn fire formation, the process of making Yin fire beads was extremely smooth. The Yin fire beads that were created this time were different from last time. The entire bead was pure white and flawless, without any trace remaining of the Yin bead. However, after Zhuemo processed 1 Yin bead, he needed to meditate to recover. The Ling power and mental power used to create it was astounding, no wonder it was a weapon of great destruction. Looking at the 20 Yin fire beads in his hands, Zhuemo felt very confident. He occasionally would dream, if he threw these 20 Yin fire beads out at once, what would it look like? Having Yin fire beads, Zhuemo didn't care about not mastering the Yin splinter. Strangely, Pu Yao seemed to have forgotten that he still owed him many Yin fiends and didn't urge him to go to the sword cave. Zhuemo was happy to be idle, but before he could enjoy the pleasure from having made the Yin fire beads, after he inspected his Ling power, his mood instantly dived down a cliff. Damn it! His cultivation actually stopped growing. Why was it like this? The sudden blow was like lightning on a clear day, striking him dumb, his head ringing. After the MO matrix had been carved, the rate of his cultivation progress had dramatically slowed. He had been worried, but had maintained his calm because his cultivation still had been growing. But if his cultivation stopped growing? He didn't dare to imagine it. After Pu Yao's advice from before, Zhuo Mo was extremely miserly with each bit of Ling power inside his body. This had caused him to be extremely sensitive to Ling power changes inside his body. He could find the slightest change. He was only in Zhuji stage, it was the stage that cultivation should increase the fastest. He had spent large amounts of time every day on practicing embryonic breathing spiritual cultivation, in hopes that he could make it up. It was good if he just increased a little bit of Ling power. It had been like he imaged before. Due to the Mo matrix, the increase in Ling power had been slow, but his cultivation had still been tenaciously growing. However, for 5 continuous days, there hadn't been one iota of change in his Ling energy. He had never encountered a situation like this. Zhuo Mo was nervous like he had never been before. If his Ling power stopped growing, his cultivation would forever stop in Zhuji. Terror spread through his heart. He ran into the sea of consciousness. Pu Yao was sitting on the gravestone with his eyes closed. No matter how Zhuo Mo called him, he didn't move. He was like a statue. Pu Yao was meditating. It wasn't like he could ask the sect leader and the elders about this. He wouldn't optimistically hope that Second Shibua and the others, who had become famous in the Yao hunt, wouldn't recognize the Mo matrix. His cultivation paused in the stage of Zhuji. What about the dream? What would he use to search for the person that changed his features and erased his mind? It was like Zhuo Mo had been robbed of all his strength, and collapsed on the ground. Ever since he learned his features had been changed and mind erased, he had continuously told himself to search for the answer to his dream, to search for the answer to why his mind and features had been altered. But when the conviction that had pushed him forward had been broken from its foundation, he didn't know what to do. The sky was dark. He was lying on the rooftop, the sound tablet broadcasting beside him. His head was pillowed on his arms as he looked dazedly at the sky. His thoughts had floated far away. How long had it been since he had laid like this? After he had decided to search for answer, the times that he had just laid on the roof to listen to the sound tablet had decreased. Each day was filled with countless scriptures and spells that had to be practiced. Each day, he needed to tell himself repeatedly, he needed to work harder. In the dark night, the stars were like an ocean. Exhausted, Zhuo Mo was like a child, coiled into a ball, falling deeply asleep with the sound tablet broadcasting. There were no dreams. The next day, the warm sunshine shone on his body. Opening his eyes, Zhuo Mo felt his body was unspeakably relaxed. The depression of yesterday had been swept away. Thinking of his tragic perspective yesterday, he felt it was humorous. It was fine if his cultivation was not growing. As long as he tried, he would find the root of the problem. Having slept, his body was now filled with energy, filled with motivation. Without Ling power, he still had spiritual power, formations, Ling farming, dan making, and forging. He inspected the Ling power inside his body. As expected, it hadn't changed at all. However, he didn't have a tragic outlook now, but was extremely calm. After coming out of meditation, he slowly pondered and felt that he needed to determine the direction that he would take. After spending a short amount of time, he decided what he would focus on primarily, formations. To him, whose cultivation had stopped growing, the importance of formations had rose to an incomparable height. To solve the problem of the pause in his cultivation, he could not avoid formations. Now that he knew how to make formation discs, he could also use those attacking formation discs. Formations were also great aids to dan making and forging. No matter what road he chose, it would need Jingshi. How to make Jingshi, it was a problem that Zhuo Mo could not avoid. His spiritual power was different than his Ling power and its progress hadn't been affected at all, still increasing at a pretty good pace. It was a pity that he had such a treasure but didn't know how to use it. The only uses he knew involving the consciousness was the consciousness stab and Yin splinter. The power of the consciousness stab was too small. The power of the Yin splinter was good but Zhuo Mo gave up on it. The Yin splinter required pure and dense Yin energy. The only way that Zhuo Mo could think of was using the Yin bead. However, the Yin bead was too outstanding and would easily bring a disaster down on him. As a life-saving measure, the Yin splinter wasn't as powerful and convenient as the Yin fire bead. Other than that, he could still expect more from Vajra Profound Sutra. Zhuo decided to find a few spells that Body Xiu used to see if he could use something. He might be able to put some brainpower on formations. Last time the golden flesh clothing, coordinated with 30,000 Kati, had managed to stop 2 Yin splinters directly. He could also consider using the medicine seal style. He could make the Ling Dan himself, he could also forge the talismans. As to the paper seals, he wouldn't object to learning seal writing. The more Zhuo thought and clarified his thoughts, the more excited he got. The heavens would not shut off all roads. Without Ling power, he still had many other paths. Reality proved that when a person was pushed to the edge of the cliff, they could also explode with potential. In the morning, Li Yingfeng opened the store door. Seeing Zhuo outside the door, she stopped and asked instinctively, "Shitty, why are you here again?" Zhuo made a sound, not knowing what to say. It looked like Li Yingfeng Shiji had really been frightened by the inky black lotus seed incident from last time. Li Yingfeng instantly realized how inappropriate her words were and added, "Aren't you attending the sword test conference? Shouldn't you be preparing for battle right now?" Zhuo spread his hands. "Our sect will have to depend on eldest Shixiang. My bit of power isn't enough." Hearing this, Li Yingfeng frowned and said seriously, "Shitty, don't underestimate yourself." Shitty had comprehended sword essence in Zhuji. This kind of talent, other than eldest Shixiang, no one in the sect can compare. Shitty cannot let yourself go, and not think about improvement. Zhuo sweated. He knew Shiji was looking out for him but didn't know how to explain. He could only say, "This brother isn't slacking off, but a bit tight on the funds right now." Li Yingfeng's face was shocked. "Where did you spend your jingshi? You earned so much jingshi just recently, you used it all. How did you use it up?" Zhuo didn't know what to say. He couldn't tell Shiji that there was a bottomless hole hiding away in his consciousness that ate jingshi. Rationally, several thousand pieces of third-grade jingshi was an enormous sum for a Zhuji Shouja. If this was in the past, he wouldn't have even thought of it. Even in Dongfu, it was an shocking sum. Right now, Zhuo was telling her that he spent all the jingshi. How could Li Yingfeng not be shocked? Jingshi is never enough to spend. Zhuo deflected as he widened his eyes to stare at his Shiji. Unable to resist Zhuo's nagging, Li Yingfeng consented to Zhuo's request to open up for business again. Due to the reputation he had accumulated in the past, once Zhuo opened, many shouja heard and came. Zhuo didn't know that he had a small reputation with the production shouja of Dongfu. Especially when he had successfully cut the 4th-grade cold mangot, and then the bomb of successfully processing the 4th-grade inky black lotus seed. Zhuo's control of fire had been exaggerated to the extreme. This time, Zhuo was open to payment through jingshi, talismans, and jade scrolls. Everyone welcomed it, and his business was busy. After a day, Zhuo didn't look as exhausted as he once would have. He handed a jade scroll to Li Yingfeng. "Shiji, could you help me see how much jingshi for all these materials?" Li Yingfeng took the jade scroll and scanned it quickly. About 50 pieces of 3rd-grade jingshi. Shitty, you are interested in formations now. There wasn't anything high-grade on the list Zhuo provided. It was all 1st-grade materials. 50 pieces of 3rd-grade jingshi, it was enough to fill half of the yard. Li Yingfeng became even more curious how Shitty had spent the thousands pieces of 3rd-grade jingshi from last time. Yes, formations are very interesting. This is 50 pieces of 3rd-grade jingshi. Shiji, please help prepare it for me. No problem. Li Yingfeng crisply took the jingshi. She knew the shops in Dongfu almost as well as her palm. It wouldn't take much effort to buy and gather those materials. As to cultivating, Shitty was more talented than her and certainly had his own plans. Chapter 119 Intelligence. Suemo opened his eyes as he came out of meditation. He shook his head. There still hadn't been any change in his cultivation. This was the 15th day that his cultivation hadn't moved. Pu Yao was still in meditation and he didn't know when the guy would wake up. He forcefully shook his head, throwing all those thoughts out of his mind. His eyes once again landed in the yard. The yard was the backyard of the store, and naturally couldn't compare to his little yard in the West Wind Valley. The little yard was filled with all kinds of materials, jade stones, gold thread, and jadeite bamboos, etc. Most of the materials were all cheap first and second grade materials, but the sheer volume was amazing. Zuemo started to flip through the materials, occasionally summoning the stalagmite fire to process some materials. Sometimes, he would take out a little knife to shape the material into the form required. He would sometimes suddenly stop, and sink into his thoughts. The materials flowed like water through his hands. He carefully placed some of them in the corner, and threw some of them to the ground carelessly. After laboring for 4 hours, when the sound tablet announced the time, he finally woke up from his work. It was time to work and earn jingshu. He reluctantly rose up. Before, he hadn't been interested in formations and felt it hard to learn. Now that he was concentrating on it, he actually found that there were many interesting places. Things like sword scriptures and spells would frequently have places where the descriptions would be lacking, and promoted comprehension. Only formations focused on transformations of yin-yang and the 5 elements. Even though it was incomparably complex, but after careful study, Zuemo was able to understand the main concepts. Only after Zuemo left did Li Yingfeng come over to clean up the yard. As she cleaned, she sighed. No wonder Shidi felt he didn't have enough jingshu to spend. Spending like this, how could it be enough? Li Yingfeng was responsible for buying all the materials that Zuemo needed. She was clear to Zuemo's daily expenses. Shidi would spend from a minimum of 30 pieces of 3rd grade jingshu, to over 100 3rd grade jingshu on materials every day. This was just because Shidi wanted low-grade materials. If he used middle-grade materials, then the expenses would fly to an intimidating step. She had never heard of anyone who learned formations like this. However, Shidi was a weird person. He didn't learn like other people, and he didn't make jingshu like other people. Quite a few times, she had wanted to urge Shidi to be more frugal, but when she thought about the jingshu that Shidi made every day, the words that reached her mouth went away. Shidi only spent 6 hours taking jobs each day. All of his other time was completely spent on the mountain of materials piled up in the yard. She stopped walking, her gaze landing on a formation disc beside her feet. The initial days, formation discs were what Shidi had made the most. However, after that, the number of formation discs that Shidi made decreased. It had been a few days since Shidi had made a formation disc. Why was he making formation discs again? Was he preparing for the sword test conference? Li Yingfeng picked the formation disc up from the ground. Closely examining it, she found that she didn't understand what was written on the disc at all. She laughed. Wei Xing Shixiang and Zuemo Shixiang were both genius. How could normal people understand the mind of geniuses? Before Zuemo Shidi, Li Yingfeng had never seen formation discs before. She carefully put the formation disc in the corner. After cleaning up Zuemo for this many days, she could easily sort out what was useful and what was trash. Zuemo's business was average today. Since a few days ago, his business had declined. He knew that it couldn't be avoided. There were only so many shouja that need his services. It was due to the sword test conference that he had earned so much. The people that could exchange and pay valuable goods were not local shouja. Cultivation was piled up with jingshu. Zuemo knew this from a long time ago, but only after studying formations did he truly have an understanding of the phrase. Formations were completely built up with jingshu. Seeing that his stream of income was not long-lasting, his own studies would probably also pause soon. However, in a short amount of time, it would be his turn to attend the sword test conference. At this time, he was too lazy to care about earning jingshu. It would wait until after the sword test conference. When Zuo cleaned up for the day, Li Yingfeng handed him a jade scroll. "What is this?" Zuo asked strangely. "The information on a few attendees of the sword test conference." Li Yingfeng saw that Zuo was looking strangely at her and explained, "The sect leader left me in charge of the logistics. I have to do something." "Oh, and some information about the sword test conference." "Oh." Zuo took it and asked, "Did you send it to eldest Shixiang and Luo Li?" Li Yingfeng was angry, the tendons in her forehead jumping. It would have been fine if Zuo hadn't mentioned it, but since he did, she was extremely displeased. After the sect leader put her in charge of logistics, she had especially gathered the informations and given it to Weisheng Shixiang and Luo Li Shixiang. Weisheng Shixiang had disappeared without a trance, and Luo Li Shixiang had looked at her in puzzlement and asked, "What's the use in this?" She had almost died from anger. Seeing Zuo's unconcerned attitude, her displeasure reached a peak and she gave a cold snort, turned and left. Zuo rubbed his head in puzzlement, ignorant of what had set Shiji off. Returning to his room, he took the jade scroll and started to browse through. There was a lot of information inside the jade scroll, especially for those powerful experts. It seemed that Shiji had put a lot of effort. As he read, Zuo started to get interested. Gu Rongping, from Clear Sky Lake, called the strongest among the younger generation of Clear Sky Lake. He might be warm and gentle, but his title of the strongest of Clear Sky Lake was based in his battles. From 2 years ago, he fought sect after sect without one loss. That had created his strongest in Clear Sky Lake title. Clear Sky Lake had beautiful scenery and dense Ling energy. It was much more prosperous than Dongfu, and the sects there outnumbered Dongfu. The title of strongest, it really had some substance to it. Finishing off Gu Rongping's information, Zuo had a feeling that this Gu Rongping would be eldest Shixiang's enemy. As to himself, he didn't have any thought. If it wasn't for the order of the sect leader, he definitely wouldn't attend something like this sword test conference. With that time, he would rather earn Jingshi, Zuo muttered. He kept on reading. Nan Menyang, Gue Feng etc. None of them were simple people. Zuo also saw quite a few that he was familiar with. Dong Fu Hal's Yubai, Linging Sects Changheng, Dong Qi Sword Sects Zong Ming Yen etc. were all included. He even saw a person that he had met a long time ago, Qi Sword Sects Liang Luo. However, the other person, Shi Xiang, who had given him the ice crystal sword was not on the list. Zuo's gaze suddenly landed on the picture of one of the people in the jade scroll. The person was wearing a black veiled hat. Wasn't this the person that came to him to cut the cold magnet? So this guy was also attending the competition. He didn't know anyone else on the list. However, when he saw their cultivation level, he was instantly speechless. Ningmai, 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 all Ningmai. All the Xiuzha that were not local who had passed through the preliminary sword test conference were all Ningmai. Zuo didn't have any thoughts of struggling at all. What he was pondering now was surrendering immediately when he was called up. When the warm and harmonious smile of the sect leader flashed through his head, he instantly shook, and cleared his head, brushing away the thought. Being injured was a minor matter. If the sect leader was thinking about Ji, then Ji wouldn't have good days in the future. Seeing this list that could really be considered grand, he felt, in his sect, only eldest Shixiang had any hope of victory. Even Luo Li Shixiang wasn't anything to look at. Luckily, there were no Jindan Xiuzha. Otherwise, Zuo felt his heart couldn't bear it. Following that was the rules for this year's sword test conference. Li Yingfeng Shiji probably had guessed that the three of them would have been concerned about this, so she had completely listed everything. There wasn't anything unclear in the rules. After the preliminary sword test conference was the true sword test conference. The first 2 rounds were random one-on-one matches, followed by a competition without any rules. At that time, Elder Tian Songzi would open the Great Pine Pavilion of Dong Fu Hall for all the attendees to enter. Inside Dong Fu Hall's Great Pine Pavilion, any contestant could attack any other person until the other lost the ability to battle. In the end, the last 10 remaining people would become the winners of this competition. To guarantee that there wouldn't be any fatalities among the contestants, there would be 10 or so Jindan judges that would be present the entire time. The ranking of the 10 people would also be decided by the Jindan experts. TSK, even Jindan experts were coming out to be judges. 10 at a time, this would really be spectacular. Zhuo hadn't understood this sword test conference at all. Such a public rousing and cost-intensive sword test conference, there wasn't any use. Oh, maybe the elders had their own thoughts. Zhuo kept on reading and his mind jumped. What was after were the prizes for this sword test conference. Zhuo's eyes were bright as he looked at the rows of prizes, drooling. 4th grade Pine Green Peak Sword, 4th grade 100 Desolate Lucky Beast Belt, 4th grade Scattered Gold Coronet, 3rd grade Elemental Cloud Water Sleeve, 3rd grade Sky Woven Clothing, 3rd grade Ice Snake Ling Armor. There were 10 high-quality talismans. The order to pick was based on the ranking received in the competition. Only now did Zhuo understand why so many Xiuzha had come to Dongfu to attend the sword test conference. As they said, people die for wealth, birds die for food. He gritted his teeth and thought in fury. When his gaze swept across one of the prizes, countless ripples started in his heart. He was extremely tempted. At this time, he only hated how low his strength was. Without an exception, the first 10 talismans were the finest of the finest. They were even a few ranks above the talismans he had taken from the wastrels of Ling Ying sect. For some of the prizes, Zhuo wanted to sell himself, in exchange for the talisman. After greedily looking through the first 10 prizes, Zhuo gluttonously looked down. There were also 3rd grade talismans in the lower ranks, but were clearly lower in quality than the first 10. Zhuo had read with great interest. Okay, even if Ji wouldn't get one, he could still enjoy looking at them, Zhuo comforted himself. These few days, he had been sunk in the world of formations, spending great mental effort. Relaxing now, he felt light. Just as he browsed randomly through the prizes and occasionally calculating the prices, as he drooled. Suddenly, when his gaze reached one of the prizes, he first stilled and then suddenly stood up. Chapter 120, An Irresistible Temptation. Zhuo's gaze was fixed on this jade scroll. His eyes did not leave it for even a moment. Elementary formations. In the list of the prizes, it was ranked 56th, as a 2nd grade prize. The description of this jade scroll was very simple, a jade scroll about the elementary formations, suited for beginners. But what attracted Zhuo's gaze was the 2 characters that labeled the origins of this jade stick, Kun Luan. He suddenly became excited. Kun Luan. This jade scroll was from Kun Luan. These 2 words, it was like they had magic, they made Zhuo's heart beat rapidly. It had to be said that the ground under his feet, the sky moon Jia he lived in, even the bigger Jia that the Jindan experts had come from, they all belonged to one name, Kun Luan. In the heart of any sword show, Kun Luan was the ultimate existence. It meant strength, it meant domination, it meant ultimate power, it meant the strongest sword show. It was the true master of Kun Luan realm, and the leader of the cultivation world. There were not many stories about Kun Luan. For the great majority of Xiuzha, Kun Luan was distant and high up, an extremely mysterious place. In reality, when Zhuo first saw the 2 characters, he had blanked for a little while. For a normal disciple of a little sect in Sky Moon Jia, these 2 words were too distant and unfamiliar. However, when he managed to react, he could not control his excitement. The bigger the sect, the more the importance they placed on the education of the disciples that had just entered the sect. They would create some jade scrolls for the beginner disciples to study. These beginner jade scrolls would usually be extremely expansive and would contain all kinds of basic spells. Because the beginner scrolls required a specialist to make, the number produced each year was limited. There wouldn't be many left over and there were even fewer that spread out. The beginner jade scrolls of each sect were different. They would be written according to the specialties of the sect. Even in the same sect, as the shoja responsible for writing them each year was different, there would be different versions. Of course, for small sects like Wukong Sword Sect, there naturally wouldn't be any beginner jade scrolls. There were many new disciples that entered large sect annually, and there was high demand. Since there were many experts, they had the manpower and the wealth to make them. In small sects, the elders would pass on knowledge through speech to their own disciples. The beginner formation jade scroll of Kunlun, it was something that Zhua Mo didn't even dare to dream about. Even though it came out of Kunlun, but it was still only a beginner jade scroll, so it was ranked 56th in the prizes. Those that attended the sword test conference were mostly Ningmai Shoja. For them, a beginner's scroll was not of much use, much less a formation's jade scroll. If it was a beginner sword jade scroll, there probably would be many that would want it. Kunlun's sword scripture. The temptation that this jade scroll was to Zhua Mo was incomparable. Wukong Sword Sect didn't have systematic formation jade scrolls. He had to piece together everything he had learned from bits and pieces. This caused him to feel extremely frustrated and left him stuck frequently. If he had such a jade scroll, he would probably walk into a lot fewer detours. Without even thinking about it, he made a decision: he needed to get this jade scroll. But when he gradually calmed down, he started to ponder the probability of success. In the prizes for this sword test conference, this jade scroll was not attractive. The participants from the list should not have much interest in this jade scroll. But no matter what, if he wanted to get a chance to pick this jade scroll, it was necessary for him to pass through the first 2 rounds. Thinking about the numerous Ningmai on the list, Zhua Mo felt a prickle on his head. But if he had to watch as this jade scroll brushed past him, he was not willing. After thinking about it, he made a decision. No matter what, he had to try. This beginner scroll completely turned around the attitude Zhua Mo held towards the sword test conference. He felt he needed to make some preparations. The shoja population in Dongfu kept on growing. The preliminary sword test conference had just finished yesterday. After 5 more days, this year's Dongfu sword test conference would finally arrive at the beginning of its peak. Dongfu's order had not been disturbed as the non-local shoja came in. With more than 10 jindan present, this place was the most orderly in Dongfu. Do you want one? The match list for the sword test conference that just came out. With this list, don't worry about what to attend. Exclusively selling in-depth information on the fighters of this year's sword test conference. The ranking produced by the composite reviews of countless high experts. Exclusive. Definitely exclusive. It will become your most trusted partner when you make a bet. Zhua Mo, walking in the notice altar, felt a bit of interest as he heard the advertisements. He wasn't interested in the match list which had just been announced 2 days ago. But this ranking was slightly interesting. After walking a few more steps, he heard calls again. It was also a power-based ranking, but another version. In a few strides, Zhua Mo heard at least 4 versions of the ranking. The price was actually the same, each one a piece of 3rd-grade jingshi. Only later did he realize that the betting houses of Dongfu had all been opened. Not including those who had a habit of gambling, even the normal people would make a few bets just out of interest. If there was demand, there naturally would be supply. Zhua Mo had been thinking about studying his opponent, so he bought a copy of every ranking. He took a close look. These rankings did have some substance. The person ranked first was Gu Rongping, the participant that still had not lost up until now. Gu Rongping was placed first on almost all of the rankings, and there seemed to be consensus. Starting from the second person, each version would have different choices. However, in the first 10, some people appeared very frequently. However, what Zhua Mo felt strange was that the local fighters rarely appeared in the top 10. Only Yu Bai had appeared in a few of the rankings. The reason they gave was universal. The disciple of Tianzong Zi has a definite local advantage. Zhua Mo couldn't help but get angry. What type of trash had made these rankings? Eldest Shixiang was in the 20s and 30s. In his heart, eldest Shixiang might not get first, but he definitely would be in the top 10. Suddenly, he thought about himself. Oh, what would his ranking be? His gaze went down the rankings. Nothing, still nothing, still nothing. When his gaze landed on the last name on the ranking, he saw his own name. At the side, it gave a reason. The only Zhuji Xiuzhe in this year's sword test conference. Zuo first blanked, and then became furious. He looked at another ranking, his name was still at the end. The reason was the same. That wasn't right. Luo Li Shixiang was also in Zhuji. Why did they say he was the only Zhuji participant? Zuo felt it was extremely unfair. He quickly scanned the ranking and found Luo Li Shixiang's name. Ningmai. Zuo instantly blanked. When did Luo Li Shixiang enter Ningmai? What sort of trash ranking was it? It was all nonsense. Zuo decided to not pay attention to these rankings. He had a clear goal for coming out today. In the free market, Fu Jin blanked when he saw Zuo, and then enthusiastically came over. Moge, how come you have the time to cove over? Don't you need to attend the sword test conference? Those beady eyes, however, could not disguise the mirth within. Zuo saw Fu Jin's expression and said irritably, "What, do you have an opinion?" "No, no." Fu Jin waved his hands, and said fawningly, "Moge, if you come out, even Gu Rongping isn't a match for you. If you want him to break one leg, he wouldn't dare to break the other leg, okay, okay." Even Zuo felt that Fu Jin's words were too fake. One Gu Rongping by himself was more than enough to defeat 10 Zuomos. He reached out, "Did you prepare the stuff?" Fu Jin snickered and took out a jade scroll from his bosom, putting it in Zuomo's hand. "When your opponent was announced, I started searching. This has all the records of the matches that Chowan has participated in, and some stuff gathered from other avenues." Zuo was moved. He knew that Fu Jin had put enormous effort on this little jade scroll. Chowan was Zuomo's upcoming opponent. Zuo had asked Fu Jin to search for all the information on his opponent in the past. Liang Feng Shiji might work hard, but she only had to manage a little shop. In this area, she was not as skilled as a snakehead like Fu Jin. Zuo shoved a bag at Fu Jin. The moment Fu Jin held it, he knew how much tincture was in the bag. He was not happy at all, and said expressionlessly as he stared at Zuo, "What is this for?" Zuo shook his head, "Not for you to pay out. I'm still hoping that you could help me prepare the information for my opponent for the next round." Fu Jin's face finally turned from cloudy to sunny and snickered, "That's great. I've bet quite a little sum on you. Don't let me lose." "Oh, then pray for me to win." Zuo spread his hands. The other was in Ningmai. There was a gigantic gap between the two of them. Even Zuo didn't have that much confidence in himself. He just wanted to try his best. In reality, he could not overcome the temptation of that Kunlun beginner formation's jade scroll. As the person of the lowest cultivation attending the competition, it was rational that the odds were against him. This was also why his match was the first of the conference. The first match. If he became an embarrassment, it would be a good one. He definitely would not have a good time when he returned. Zuo had cursed the person who had arranged the matches countless times. Wukong Hall. Yan Li's expression was slightly strange. Little Mo actually got arranged to be the first match. Pei Yuanran laughed, "Probably Ling Ying's sect. Little Mo really made them lose face last time." "It's rational, rational." Shi Fengrong was infuriated, "Rational my ass. Dare to harass my disciple, they don't want to live. The 1,000-flower 100-poison miasma that I just finished making hasn't had a place to experiment yet." The other three instantly felt their heads inflate. They hurriedly stopped Shi Fengrong, who had almost exploded, and comforted her. Don't worry, don't worry. Little Mo is very slippery, won't really get in trouble." Pei Yuan ran comforted. Even more, it would be good for him to get some experience. As to face, us old people don't care about that. Yan Lu smiled from the side. Shi Feng Rong sat angrily on the chair. A cold light flashed through Xian Yan's eyes. I hadn't thought that Luo Li would enter Ningmai this quickly. It seems like that his fight with little Mo last time had been of great benefit, Yan Lu said. Luo Li doesn't lack talent. It was just his mentality that stopped him from progressing. Now that he has been reborn, our sect has another great warrior, Pei Yuan Ran said, nodding. The joy in his voice was extremely evident. Shi Feng Rong looked in the surroundings and her brows furrowed. Where's Wei Sheng? Chapter 121, Wager in an Empty Patch of Wilderness. Wei Sheng and a white-clothed male were facing off. Who are you? Why are you entering Wukong Mountain? What do you want to do? Wei Sheng said in a heavy voice, his splitting rainbow sword was ready to attack. This person of unknown origins had snuck into Wukong Mountain. He had accidentally discovered him. The other's cultivation was slightly above him. He had just come out of the sword formation. After fighting for a long time and having just broken through into Ningmai, his mentality was at the highest level. His perception was more sensitive than it ever had been. If this was before, he definitely wouldn't have detected the other person. The other was so strong, he was in awe. He had pursued the other for 300 kilometers and had almost lost them a few times. What he had given him an even worse feeling was the other person seemed to have had not used his full power. Wei Sheng's personality was courageous. Even though he knew the other was strong, he didn't have any thoughts to retreat. The desire for battle rose in his eyes. I heard that young Master Wei had caused a natural apparition when entering Zhuji, the sword energy reaching to the skies. Seeing you today, you really have lived up to your reputation. After entering the sword cave, young Master seems to have learned a lot. Your sex, Void Sword, finally has been uncovered. It really is auspicious. The white-clothed male's voice was warm and gentle, like a clear spring. Paired with his extremely handsome appearance, he appeared to be a graceful and learned young man, someone that people would have a hard time finding dislike for. Wei Sheng was even more wary. Other than the sect's disciple, no one else knew that he had entered the sword cave. This person was so clear about the sword cave. If previously, he hadn't been certain if the other had deliberately snuck into Wukong Mountain, he was now certain that this person had been secretly gathering information about the sect, and had malicious aims. If you are not willing to give your name, there is nothing to say. His tiger-like eyes brightened, and he shouted. The air around him moved, yet there was no wind, and slowly started to circle around him. The splitting rainbow sword appeared his hand, pointed at the white-clad male. The white-clad male found his surroundings darken as though he was situated in a void. An empty and murderous nothingness. An abnormal light flashed through the white-clothed male's eyes as he praised, young Master Wei is as talented as expected. Void Sword will definitely be spectacular in young Master's hands. As he spoke, the figure of the white-clothed male that was standing still slowly faded. When he said the last word, his figure vanished at the same time, only leaving behind his voice. Shock finally came into Wei Sheng's eyes. His consciousness repeatedly scanned the surroundings. There were no traces. The other had left. Under the lock of his sword essence, he had disappeared into thin air. He made a thoughtful sound, stepped on the splitting rainbow sword, turned into a red light and flew in the direction of Wukong sword sect. When his figure disappeared on the horizon, on the spot the white-clothed male had disappeared, a figure slowly appeared. Is it him? He gazed at the sky as he said to himself. Sky Moon House was the best dwelling in Dongfu. It was halfway up the mountain, constructed on top of a Ling vein. There were 47 suites in total, all with the necessary talismans. The Ling energy inside the rooms was extremely thick. The Xiuzhe that passed through enjoyed resting at this place, but its price was extremely high. 10 pieces of third-grade Jingshi per day. Zhuemo might have earned a fair bit each day, but if he had to live in Sky Moon House, he would barely manage to pay the rent for each day, much less any other service. Sky Moon House, which was usually half filled, was entirely filled today. The rent each day jumped from 10 pieces of third-grade jingshi to 50 pieces of third-grade jingshi. Even so, there were no vacancies. All the experts that came from different parts of Sky Moon Jia were living here. The alcohol of Sky Moon House was Old Wang alcohol. The Ling food came from Master Xiao's food pavilion. The Star Pavilion, the gathering place of Sky Moon House, had numerous day stones and broken crystals embedded in the ceiling, creating a roof of stars. In the rooms inside the Star Pavilion, the serene blue ivy climbed all over the place, the blue fluorescence adding hints of mystery. Brother Chow is really lucky. Beside the stone table, a person couldn't help stating. The people's seats were all attendees of the competition. Each person's face was full of envy. Without a doubt, Chowan had been the luckiest in his draw of all of them. Chowan was smug inside, but said, "I'm actually envious of everyone else. You can all have a good fight. For me, even if I won, I won't be praised." He came from Fort Chow, cultivated the extremely obscure fiery Polaris hammer, extremely strong and exquisite. Brother Chow is getting an advantage in playing humble. One of the other people smiled and said, "Ask anyone else here, who doesn't want to switch with Brother Chow. Reputation is intangible, but the prize is real." The people seated all agreed. Chowan could only beg for forgiveness. In the end, only after he promised to pay for the meal did the others stop. In the little pavilion covered with light gauze, the figures of two people could be barely made out from the outside. If the gauze was lifted, anyone would instantly see it was the pick to win the competition, Gu Rongping, and opposite him was a silent person wearing a black gauze veil. "I had wanted to find a quiet place. But I didn't expect to see these kind of people," Gu Rongping frowned, and said discontentedly. His eyes landed on the black gauze of the person sitting opposite him, his voice warm as he said, "I hadn't thought I would encounter Shimmy here. I had thought it would take another 5 years before seeing Shimmy here." He didn't disguise the heart. No one would have guessed the person wearing the black hat, mysterious and strong Shouja called Su, was actually female. Her glowing wrist reached out and picked up the Ling tea in front of her. Gently lifting the corner of the black guaza, the moist and red lips touched the white and glowing porcelain cup. Gu Rongping's eyes instantly turned as hot as fire. "Shimmy will even refuse to let me see your visage." Gu Rongping gazed at Su, and said sedately. But the excitement in his tone naturally spilled out. "Shixiang's heart has become disordered," Su said gently, the black gauze not rippling at all. "If the heart is disordered, where is the Heart Lake sword?" Gu Rongping's eyes flashed angrily. He didn't continue, and suddenly closed his eyes. A while later, he opened them, his eyes clear. "Shimmy is correct. After the sword test conference ends, where is Shimmy planning to go?" "Forge a sword." "Oh," surprise came onto Gu Rongping's eyes, "Shimmy found some cold magnets." Su's peaceful voice finally showed some emotion, and, "It's already been cut. 4 pieces. Congratulations, Shimmy." Gu Rongping's heart was even more fretful. If Shimmy went to forge a sword, she probably won't come out in 5 years. His heart suddenly moved. If this brother hasn't remembered it wrong, if the cold magnet is made into a sword, it has to first be made into a sword billet. But this processing, "I've already found someone," Su's voice returned to its usual faintness, "no need for Shixiang to worry." At this time, Chow An's table erupted in laughter again. "Ah, need to prepare for the match soon. Yes, only Brother Chow can slack off. A Zhuji guy. If Brother Chow uses more than 3 moves, this one will disdain you. Why don't we make a wager? Wager on how many moves it will take Brother Chow to finish. This is good. I bet 3 moves. I wager 1. Okay. Be generous and stop mocking me." Chowan bowed, "I just said it. Look, even if I win, I won't get any benefits." The people jeered again. Gu Rongping had just hit a soft nail with Shimmy and was angry. Hearing the crow chat, he was even more furious. A cold light flashed through his eyes. He was young, of extraordinary cultivation, and famed. He was usually favored in the sect. No one usually dared to be so outrageous in front of him. His face was instantly dark. He had just thought of standing up to teach this crowd a lesson when his eyes blurred. At some unknown time, Shimmy had stood up. What did she want to do? I bet 10 moves, behind the light gauze, Sue said faintly as she faced Chowan and the others. Her voice was not loud, but easily passed through the light gauze. This light gauze had isolation formations, but they were not effective right now. The table instantly became silent. Chow An's face was frighteningly dark. Who, sir, are you? Please give a name. Chowan smiled insincerely as he raised his hands in a greeting. Being slapped in front of his friends, could Chowan tolerate it? Because there were isolation formations on the light gauze, they could only see that there were 2 people inside. However, they could not see or hear their appearance or the content of their words. You do not have to know who I am. Bet, or no bet? Sue said, unaffected. Gu Rongping was slightly surprised. Shimmy was cold and indifferent. No one could be more clear about that than he was. She should not be interested in this kind of matter. But she was now wagering for someone else, this. What relationship did Shimmy have with that person? Light rose in Gu Rongping's eyes, his expression was slightly interested. In front of so many people, if he didn't accept this bet, then Chow An's reputation would really sweep the floor. Couldn't defeat a Zhuji with 10 moves. The other was clearly trying to humiliate him. Chowan was extremely angry, but his voice was steady as he said, since sire has said it, then this one will accept it. What to bet? Anything. A faint voice came out of the light gauze pavilion. Chowan became even more certain the other was mocking him. A cold smile came out of his face. He took out a jade bottle and opened the stopper. Ling energy and a fragrant medicinal smell instantly spread in the air. The people in the surroundings felt their minds jump. Some that understood Ling Dan became restless. 3rd grade Intense Fire Dan. There are 36 of them. Intense Fire Dan was a Ling Dan that was a specialty of Fort Chow. The fire it contained was extremely domineering. It was a famous fire-type Ling Dan in Sky Moon Jie. An item flew out of the pavilion. Chow An's eyes focused and caught it. Dying Flowing Moon, 3rd grade. The people seated couldn't keep still, and stood up, each one stretching their necks to look at the crystal bottle in Chow An's hands. The crystal bottle was clear and flawless. The bottle itself was not cheap. Inside the crystal bottle, there was a fingernail-sized ball of faint misty fluid. Dying Flowing Moon. Supposedly, every 10 years, there would be an extremely bright mid-autumn moon. Dying Flowing Moon was made from the moonlight of that night. It was extremely valuable and rare. Just this little bottle of Dying Flowing Moon, its value far surpassed Chow An's Intense Fire Dan. Chow An's face was black. Chapter 122, Bet Tao Zuer, Yan Mingzi, and Hu Shan were walking on the streets of Dongfu. They liked being in busy places, and right now, what place in Sky Moon Jia was more busy than Dongfu? Hu Shan rubbed his hands, and said with an excited expression, excellent. I've waited for so long. The stupid preliminary sword test conference finally finished. Only the true competition is worth seeing. Tao Zhuer's eyes were dazed, yes. Gu Rongping is too handsome. I think, in Sky Moon Jia, there isn't a man more outstanding than him. I really like him. Hu Shan stared at Tao Zhuer inside for being a fangirl. He suddenly noticed that Yan Mingzi seemed unfocused. Old Yan, what are you thinking about? Yan Mingzi raised his head and focused. He gave a grimace. I'm thinking about making Jingshi. Making Jingshi? You're lacking for Jingshi right now. I've got some right now. Do you want some? Hu Shan said forthrightly. The three, because they had the same battle experience, became close friends. Yan Mingzi shook his head, just bought a new flying sword. I've nearly spent all my jingshi. No rush, I can slowly make more. I'll find you if I really can't find a way. Oh, you bought a new flying sword? Quick, let us see, said Tao Zhuer, as she was instantly interested in the new sword. Yan Mingzi took out a dark blue flying sword. The sword's name is Deep Ocean, it's 3rd grade. Hu Shan looked and then shook his head. It can't compare to your previous water drop sword. You're just wasting words. Yan Mingzi rolled his eyes in exasperation. Hu Shan's words stirred up the three's hurt. Seeing the situation, Tao Zhuer quickly changed the topic. So what way did you think of making jingshi? Of the three, Yan Mingzi was of average power but the best at business. As expected, this question was Yan Mingzi's true love. He came the focus of attention. Of course, it is the sword test conference. Sword test conference? How do you make jingshi from that? Hu Shan asked strangely. Yan Mingzi patiently explained, we can't meddle in other business, but if we have spare money, and make a small bet, it wouldn't be bad. Hu Shan instantly became disinterested, and said scornfully, you mean gambling, that's not interesting. Tao Zhuer was actually interested. Old Yan, don't pay attention to him. Tell me more. Yan Mingzi became even more excited. Gambling naturally is not anything good. But the sword test conference is different from other gambling. How so? There might be luck in this sword test conference, but the true determinant is power. There are patterns that can be found in this. A person's strength, in a short period of time, wouldn't change very much. Considering the conflict between different spells, the quality of the talismans, even though it is impossible to accurately decide the result of the match, but one can determine the general direction. Hu Shan laughed, then how will you know other people's strength? And their talismans? Yan Mingzi nodded, this is the crux of the problem. It is very hard to determine power, but the non-local competitors have already fought a few times, and general guesses can be made. As to talismans, he said proudly, in this area, I have some experience. That's true. Old Yan, you're always good at picking talismans, said Hu Shan. He admired Yan Mingzi very much on this skill. Hugh, Yan Mingzi said smugly, there are many kinds of wagers. Like the first match that's been spread around so much, Zhua Mo versus Chowan. What's there to gamble there? Of course Chowan wins. Hu Shan said unconcernedly, the scalping zombie might be strong, but his cultivation is just that. He definitely cannot win over Ningmai experts. Exactly. Yan Mingzi agreed, but his direction changed, but right now, what spread the most is this wager. Everyone is betting how many moves that Zhua Mo can take from Chowan. This bet works? Hu Shan gaped. Ha, the odds for 3 moves and under are pretty normal. After 3 moves, the odds explode, Yan Mingzi said. Did you bet? Hu Shan asked. Oh, I put down for 7 moves, Yan Mingzi said smugly, the odds are 1 to 16. You feel he can endure 7 of Chowan's moves? Hu Shan's face was full of shock, Chowan isn't some little character. He's the strongest disciple of Fort Chao. You have too much confidence in the scalping zombie. Yan Mingzi said in a deep voice, how do you think Chowan compares to Changheng Shixiang? Naturally he cannot compare. Hu Shan didn't need to think before saying unhesitatingly, Changheng Shixiang is very strong. Before, when he was in Zhuji, he had defeated people in Ningmai. Ah! Yan Mingzi was slightly shocked at the last part, how come I didn't know this? Hu Shan unconsciously lowered his voice, not many people know this. Shixiang's blood spider sword was obtained by killing someone. That's why he was punished by the sect leader. The other 2 instantly felt fearful shock. It seems my jingshi won't be wasted, Yan Ming spoke. The first thing Yan Mingzi thought about was his Jingshi. He smiled and said, originally, the betting shouldn't be this popular. However, Chowan was confronted with a wager. The other wagered a bottle of Dying Flowing Moon for Zhua Mo to make it through 10 moves. That was what stirred everything up. Dying Flowing Moon, Hu Shan's expression was dazed as he muttered, "That's such a waste." Tao Zhu'er, who hadn't spoke, suddenly asked, "What's the odds for Zhua Mo to win?" Yan Mingzi jerked. "About 1 to 300, he looked in shock at Tao Zhu'er. "You want to bet he'll win?" "That's not possible." "Why not?" Tao Zhu'er said unconcernedly, "In any case, I'll just wager a few Jingshi. It will be an amusement." If Changheng Shixiang was in Zhuji and could be defeated, her words suddenly stopped, her eyes were focused. The other two people saw she didn't continue and found it strange. When they saw her frozen expression and dazed eyes, they couldn't help but follow her gaze. Then the two also froze. A person was walking towards them. Li Yingfeng looked at her Shidi who was in the yard and shook her head. It hadn't been anything important when Shidi had been arranged to fight first. She had felt that the sect leader had wanted Zhua Mo to gain some experience. But the bet about how long Zhua Mo could stay in the fight had suddenly spread everywhere. A person of unknown origins had publicly threw out a bottle of Dying Flowing Moon, wagering that Shidi could make it through 10 of Chao An's moves. It instantly caused a furor. Originally, no one had been interested in the match. But now, this match had become the most talked out and attractive match. Wasn't that putting Shidi onto a fire to roast? Shidi had shut himself in the yard the past few days, and was working on something she didn't know. She was extremely worried. Shidi should be practicing the sword some more, honing himself before the fight, even if it wasn't effective, at least it would look good. In the time that Shidi had stayed at the store, she had never seen him practice the sword. Did he think he could win with those useless low-grade formations? She naturally was not opposed to Shidi studying formations, but formations were more likely used in dan-making and forging. They were not very effective in fighting. At this time, he shouldn't be working on formations. Wei Sheng traveled on the splitting rainbow as he landed in Dongfu. He had gone back to Wukong Mountain and reported to the sect leader about the white-clothed male before rushing towards Dongfu. Zhua Mo was in the first match. If he came late, he would miss Shidi's match. As he entered Dongfu, the bustling crowds on the street was a small surprise to Wei Sheng. Differing from Zhua Mo, Wei Sheng was full of interest towards the sword test conference. A chance to spar with different kinds of experts, it was really rare. Just thinking about it, he felt his blood boil, and his desire for battle rise. He suddenly thought of Zhua Mo and couldn't help but smile. With Shidi's lazy personality, he definitely wouldn't be interested in the sword test conference. When he thought about Shidi's unwillingness to compete, and his helplessness against the sect leader's order, he felt it was extremely humorous. Shidi was very talented. It was a pity he was not interested in the sword. If this time, it could force him, it wouldn't be a bad thing. Wei Sheng was an exceptionally pure sword xiu. When Zhua Mo had been focusing on ling farming in the beginning, he hadn't felt anything. But when Zhua Mo's talent in cultivating the sword was revealed, but he was obsessed with other things, Wei Sheng felt it was a great pity. Suddenly, he heard words from the surroundings. "How many moves did you bet?" 3 moves. Zhuji against Ningmai. If he could make it through 3, it will be the max. Oh, I don't know what Wukong Sword Sect was thinking, sending a little Zhuji guy to embarrass themselves. Yeah. I heard his main focus is dan-making. He shouldn't be coming here. A person argued, it's not certain he'll embarrass himself. Dying Flowing Moon, who has it? A person that has Dying Flowing Moon, would they not have good eyes? From what I see, this Zhua Mo definitely has real skill. Real skill? Ha! Even if he has skill, he's only in Zhuji. Wei Sheng's expression became very ugly. He barely suppressed the impulse to beat up those people. Along the way, he heard many similar discussions. He strode to the doorway of a casino. "Hey, mister, do you want to try out your luck?" Dong Fu's hottest betting match, wagering how many moves, extremely interesting. Wei Sheng prepared to speak when a voice came from behind him. "Take out all the jingxue you have right now." "Robbery?" Wei Sheng paused and couldn't help but turn around. The person speaking was a round-faced man. There were 2 males and 1 female standing in front of him. The 3 of them seemed extremely frightened of the round-faced man, seemed to be very timid in front of him. When the round-faced man spoke, the 3 hurriedly took out all the jingxue they had. "Wagers Mo wins," the round-faced man said briskly. Yan Mingzi couldn't resist. "Chang Shixiang, this Mo." "N?" The round-faced man glanced at Yan Mingzi. Yan Mingzi's heart jumped and the words that reached his mouth shrunk back. Hu Shan and Tao Zhu were docilely standing with their heads down at the side. The 2 of them were cursing Yan Mingzi inside. "Old Yan, you dumbass. You don't want to live, but don't pull us along." Wei Sheng looked with slight surprise at the round-faced man. This was the first he had heard that someone was betting shitty would win. He noticed the clothing of the 3 people behind the round-faced man had the symbol of Ling Ying sect. Didn't Ling Ying sect have a grudge against shitty? Chang Shixiang. Wei Sheng seemed to understand. The worker that was guarding the door looked at the 4 like he was looking at idiots. Seeing the jingxue in Yan Mingzi's hands, he couldn't help but drool. He cursed inside. This group was really wastrels. If they had that much jingxue, give it to him, don't throw it in the water. Of course, none of it showed on his face. He praised, "Sire's eyes are very unique." But he still hesitated, "All on Mo winning." "Bet," the round-faced man said. Taking the receipt, the round-faced male turned and left. Yan Mingzi and the others exchanged a look and could only dispiritedly follow behind. Really wastrels. Once the round-faced man left, the worker of the casino seemed to have opened a flood, continuously talking to Wei Sheng, "Just look. Aren't those people mental? From the time the betting started, no one has bet on Mo winning. They just aren't thinking of jingxue as jingxue. What do you say, a Zhuji defeating a Ningmai, is there anything as hilarious as this? Wastrels, really terrible wastrels." He shook his head, saliva flying. 50 pieces of 3rd-grade jingxue. Wei Sheng smiled and handed over the jingxue. "Great. How many moves are you betting?" "Look here, this is the odds for each move, bet on Mo winning." Wei Sheng kept on smiling gently. The worker was dumbstruck. Chapter 123 Battle Start. Chaoan was extremely furious. In this period of time, the wagers on his and Mo's match had become the hottest topic in Dongfu. Based on what he saw, this was clearly mocking him. At what time was he ever mentioned on the same level as a Zhuji Greenhorn? What waves could a Zhuji Xiuzhe make? He didn't believe it. However, he was not a rash person. That mysterious expert could take out a treasure as dying flowing moon, then it definitely was not a joke. But when he made a search, he wanted to laugh and cry. Mo actually was a Xiuzhe whose main profession was danmaking. Look at what Chaoan had found out in relation to Mo, Ling plant farmer, golden crow pill, processing. Such a Zhuji person wanted to make it through 10 moves by him, it really was a great joke. Thinking about it, Chaoan unconsciously fisted his hands. If Mo really did block 10 of his moves, then he would become this year's sword test conference, no, the entire Sky Moon Jie's joke. He would become the target of mockery by countless people at a meal. When they mentioned him, they would never say that he was the most talented disciples of Fort Chao, but garbage that couldn't even defeat a Zhuji Greenhorn. He definitely couldn't let himself become a joke. Definitely. 2 balls of fire jumped in Chao An's eyes. What? Li Yingfeng stared dazedly at the jingxue that Mo shoved over. "You want to bet on you winning? Are you crazy?" What Suemo handed over was 300 pieces of third-grade Jingshi. Ha! Shitty has great daring. A forthright laugh suddenly passed into the store from outside. Wei Xing strode in and scanned Suemo. He smiled and said, "It seems that Shitty is full of confidence for the fight. I'm not worried anymore. I put all my money on you winning. If you lose, I won't get anything back." Ha! Li Yingfeng looked at Zuemo and eldest Shixiang like she was looking at insane people. Were they crazy? Zuemo heard Shixiang's words and his heart warmed. Everyone thought that he would lose, only Shixiang believed he would win. He suppressed the movement in his heart and smiled, "I've done a lot of work and will give Chaoan a surprise." The eyes on that zombie face flashed with a strange light. Ha! Shitty will always give people surprises. I'm looking forward to it. Wei Xing roared with laughter. They were really crazy. Li Yingfeng shook her head as she walked out the door. She'll bet it. In any case, it wasn't her Jingshi. The Dong Fu Sword Test Conference finally was going to start. Originally, no one had been interested in the first match, but the wagering had gotten so popular that the number of people that came to watch was astounding. This match where the strength was so unbalanced, the amount of Jingshi that was connected to it reached a terrifying number. This had furthered everyone's interest in the match. Anyone that heard about the wagering on how many moves it would take couldn't help but be curious how many moves Suemo could go through. How many moves? Which one would it be? The Sword Test Conference was called the Dong Fu Sword Test Conference. No one had thought that this competition would attract of more than half of the young experts of Sky Moon Jie. It could almost be called the Sky Moon Jie Sword Test Conference. There were some doubts about the Sword Test Conference, and especially about the strength of the local shouja. The non-local shouja had used spectacular performances to prove their strength. But Dong Fu's shouja had not fought up until now. This was also why, in all the rankings, the Dong Fu shouja didn't rank high. There was a quota of local shouja who did not need to pass through the preliminary Sword Test Conference. Consequently, the Zhuji shouja that appeared in the true competition was a farce in the eyes of many people. As a result, from the start of the competition, the arguments about the Sword Test Conference had not stopped. The unfairness between the local and non-local shouja etc. But the host Tian Songzi had used a very short sentence to shut everyone up. This Sword Test Conference is Dong Fu Sword Test Conference. The implicit meaning was that this was us holding a competition for ourselves. It's generous of us to let you attend. Non-local shouja had nothing to say, but their rage hadn't disappeared. Suemo was the only Zhuji shouja in this Sword Test Conference and became infamous. Many people wanted to see him get embarrassed. The wagering on how many moves it would take was primarily due to the machinations of those people. There's a lot of people. Suemo looked at the dense crowds in the surroundings and asked heartlessly, "Shiji, did you bet the Jingshi?" Li Yingfeng wanted to turn and leave. Look what time it was, Shidi was still thinking about Jingshi. She managed to suppress the impulse to explode and said irritably, "I bet it. According to your request, I spread it out." "Oh, then I'm not worried." Hee hee. Suemo gave an extremely perverse laugh with an expressionless face. It was extremely strange to see. Heavens! Why did she come out with this weirdo? It was really embarrassing. She was extremely regretful. Why hadn't she just turned and left earlier? Brother Chao, really, your opponent is someone like that? One of Chao An's people said in an exaggerated voice. Chao An's expression was extremely angry, his hands cracking as they became fists. The sect leaders and elders of the various large sects were sitting on a lucky cloud far away. Wukong Sword Sect's Pei Yuan Ran was also one of them. The lucky cloud was extremely large, multiple mu in area. On it, chairs and tables were provided as well as ling fruits and tea. The disciples of each sect were standing heads down at the side. Your sect's Suemo is very interesting. As expected, truly a money grubber. Are all your disciples like this? Ling Yin sect's sect leader roared with laughter. Their cultivations were all astonishing and they could easily catch what was happening below. Zhuo Mo and Li Yingfeng's conversation had entered their ears. Shi Fengrong's eyelid flickered, anger barely hidden. Pei Yuanran's expression was as usual. Zhuo Mo's personality is straightforward and whimsical, extremely interesting. Money grubber. Our sect, including me, the sect leader, are all money grubbers. Your sect is very wealthy and do not know the troubles of us poor people. Ha ha. That's right, this one had heard something before. Do not talk about Jingshi in front of Ling Ying's sect. Someone couldn't help but say sourly, to us poor people, scrimping and saving is very normal. Ling Ying's sect was so rich it came out of their pores. Many people were jealous. Adding in that they were usually proud and domineering, they didn't have many friendly relationships. Pei Yuanran's light words threw Ling Ying's sect on the opposite side of everyone else. The sect leader of Ling Ying's sect was not stupid. Seeing the unfriendly gazes of the people around him, he understood. His expression did not change. He smiled, saying, each family has their own problems. The wagering has been pretty hot recently, how many moves it would take. Sect leader Pei should be most familiar with your sect's disciples. How many moves does sect leader Pei think Zhuo Mo could go through? I had bet 3. He then twisted his mouth and said, could sect leader Pei give some insider information? 3 moves shouldn't be a problem, right? Shi Fengrong's eyelids and eyebrows simultaneously went up. She was about to act when Xian Yan put out a hand to stop her. Hearing this, Pei Yuanran pretended to be shocked and said, insider information? You don't know. If I remember correctly, the last time Zhuo Mo went to visit your sect, he had sparred with 5 of your disciples. Did your disciples not report that to you? Oh, something like that had happened. At the side, Tian Songzi heard this, and couldn't help but be interested. What was the result? Pei Yuanran said regretfully, lost to Changheng. Ling Ying's sect's leader's face was horrifically black. He had wanted to take the chance to mock Pei Yuanran and the others. He hadn't thought that Pei Yuanran would push a fire onto him. No matter the time, there were always people willing to add insult to injury. The leader of Qi Sword sect said, deliberately pretending to be ignorant, so that means 4 wins and 1 loss? Oh, Changheng had already broken through to Ningmai, how can he fight with a Zhuji? Hearing you guys say this, I'm full of interest in Zhuo Mo now. Another sect leader opened. It was luck, just luck. Pei Yuanran deflected. The leader of Ling Ying's sect was regretful now. But he could not explain that Changheng hadn't broken through to Ningmai at that time. Such a inglorious matter, the more that was said, the more embarrassing it was. He could only swallow the bitterness. Zhuo Mo walked onto the battlefield. Chaoan was waiting for him. Chaoan saw Zhuo Mo sedately swing as he walked onto the field and his expression became even uglier. The longer this guy stood in front of him, the more he would be laughed at. He wanted the elder responsible for judging the match to announce the start of the fight, and he would hammer this damned guy into paste. Since it was the first match, to show its importance, the judge responsible for the fight was a Jin Dan. His eyes coldly glanced across the two. In his eyes, there was no difference between Ningmai and Zhuji. The warning glance moved past the 2 people who couldn't help but shudder. The anger in Chao An's eyes disappeared, and Zhuo Mo's swaying body stopped. You can use any move other than Ling Beasts. If someone admits loss, you cannot attack. If someone is unconscious, it is instantly judged a loss, the other cannot continue to attack, Chaoan told himself. Be calm, I need to be calm. But he kept on feeling the dense crowds of spectators were all looking at him with ridicule in their eyes like they were looking at a clown. Facing the judge, he didn't dare to make any moves. He lowered his head, suppressing the anger that had accumulated in his chest. The judge finally finished announcing the rules, both of his hands making a cut down, battle start. Chaoan raised his head, his eyes filled with a stormy fury. He was like an infuriated lion, terrifying. The intense fire hammer in his hand turned with a boom into a ball of fire the size of a house and floated beside his body. The deep red flames spit and spat on the outside of the ball of fire. The heat that the fireball released could be clearly felt by spectators 100 zhang away. Chaoan seemed minuscule compared to the fireball beside him. The light of the flickering fire reflected on Chao En's face. His face was full of murderous intent. Taking the chance, Zhuo Mo's hand flipped and threw out a jade disc. Those with keen eyes instantly recognized it as a formation disc. Once the formation disc was thrown out, it turned to several streams of light and disappeared into the air. Many of the spectators either gave a disdainful expression or a disappointed one. Just a second-grade path confusion formation. What effect could it have on a Ningmai Shouja? Feeling the anger boiling in his chest, seeing the others' poor performance, Chaoan looked on with ridicule and disdain and deep anger. Just this kind of person, he could make it through 10 of his moves. Chapter 124 Multiple Shadows and Intense Fire. A second-grade path confusion formation posed no risk to Chaoan, who was in the stage of Ningmai. Poof! Like a bubble bursting, the light sound didn't cause a ripple. The light surrounding Chaoan changed slightly. The path confusion formation couldn't even endure the presence of the fireball beside Chaoan and was instantly torn to bits. However, in that period of time, in front of Chaoan, Zhuo Mo had turned from 1 to 5. Multiple Ghost Shadows Seal. Watching from the side, Yan Mingzi and the others gaped and turned to look at each other. Isn't this Wang Shixiang's medicine seal style? Such a wretched opening move. The core of the medicine seal style. Standing beside the three people was Wang Shixiang. At this time, he was gaping with wide eyes, not knowing what to say. Last time, Zhuo Mo had defeated him. Adding in the fact the wagering had been extra hot in Dongfu, he had great interest about the scalping zombies match, and had especially came to watch. Not just him, nearly all the disciples of Lingying's sect had come out, wanting to personally see the sorry outcome of the scalping zombie. It had always been Lingying's sect running to other sects and bullying other people. To be harassed at their own doors, and losing, Zhuo Mo was the first one. It was an embarrassment. The Lingying sect disciple gritted their teeth, wanting to go up, skin and strip the damn zombie, especially when they saw Zhuo Mo was using Wang Shixiang's medicine seal style. Instantly, the new hate and the old grudges merged. The spectators all shook their heads. Multiple Ghost Shadows Seal was very useful in the battles between low-level Shouja, but facing a person higher than the user like Chaoan, this move was not effective. For illusions, one real person. The illusions had to be controlled by the real person. This was why the Multiple Ghost Shadows Seal was not used in higher-level battles. Controlling the illusions meant that one had to split their attention and the difficulty of manipulation would increase. Those illusions were only useful for confusion others but did not do anything else. On the field, 5 Zhuo Mo spread out. Whoa! A light suddenly rose in the eyes of Wang Shixiang. He was the creator of medicine seal style, and the Multiple Ghost Shadows Seal was his trademark opening move. He was way too familiar with this move. But with his eyes, he actually could not detect which of the 5 Zhuo Mo was the real one. The movements of the 5 Zhuo Mo's were extremely synchronized. They continuously took out formation discs from the 100 treasures pouch at the waist and then furiously threw them into the field. In a second, the formation discs flew like rain into the field. How was it possible? In a second, his expression froze. His mouth slowly dropped further, but he didn't realize it. He couldn't tell, still couldn't tell. Each Zhuo Mo moved just the same as the real one. There was no stiffness, no place that they seemed fake. The other disciples might not understand the difference, but Wang Shixiang, who was so familiar with the Multiple Ghost Shadows Seal, how could he not understand the difficulty involved? The illusions created by the Multiple Ghost Shadows Seal would not move on their own. If they had to move, it must be controlled by the mind. With his skill, he could just control one illusion, and he had to leave the other three alone. The one illusion that he could control would definitely not be as realistic and detailed as what was happening now. Controlling 4 illusions at the same time, and could fight with such ease, how terrifying must his consciousness be? Unknowingly, sweat started to flow down his back and silently dripped down. He suddenly had a strong feeling this fight wouldn't peacefully and easily finish. In Sky Moon Jia that was dominated by Sword Xiu, aids like the multiple ghost shadow seal were things that people ridiculed. But Wang Shixiang, who had a deep knowledge of the multiple ghost shadow seal, was very clear: if the user could accurately control every illusion, the useless multiple ghost shadow seal would become full of danger. No, it was actually terrifyingly dangerous. When it was impossible to distinguish the illusions using the naked eye, one had to use their consciousness to detect it. However, would the consciousness of a person who could control 4 illusions be weak? If one could not tell the true from the illusions and their spirit was not strong enough, then there was only one way. This fight had attracted countless pairs of eyes, experts gathering around. They may not be as familiar with the multiple ghost shadow seal as Wang Shixiang, but their understanding of battle helped them see some clues. The underestimation on many people's faces were swept away. They started to think, if they were facing an opponent who had 5 bodies, real and illusory, how could they deal with it? On the lucky cloud, Tian Song Zi saw Zhua Mo's move and couldn't help but praise, "Your sex Zhua Mo is really a good one. I heard you Bai say that he had comprehended sword essence when he was in Lianqi. I hadn't quite believed it, but seeing him now, he really is exceptionally talented." Comprehended sword essence in Lianqi? Once the words were spoken, the sect leaders on the lucky cloud all had shocked expressions. The heavens really loved Wukong's sword sect too much. Having a genius that had an apparition when he entered Juji, and hiding a genius that comprehended sword essence when he was in Lianqi. Other than sighing, they couldn't help but feel admiration and envy. Each of them had their own thoughts. The face of the Lingying sect leader was extremely poor. Comprehended sword essence in Lianqi? Shi Feng Rong, Xin Yan and the others stared at each other, their eyes filled with shock and surprise. They found that they hadn't had a clue at all. "Great, see how I'll sort you out when we get back." The light jumped in Shi Feng Rong's eyes and she burned with anger. Chaoan could not distinguish the real Zhua Mo from the fake illusions. In the scriptures that he had practiced in Fort Chao, the spirit was the area that was the least important. Looking at the 5 Zhua Mo throne formation discs into the field, he felt joy instead of anger. The more Zhua Mo showed he was strong, after he won, the better he would look. In reality, the strength that Zhua Mo was displaying now could be considered the top of Zhuji Shouja. But, what you are facing is a Ningmai Shouja. The distance between you and I is much bigger than you have imagined. Chaoan gave a dark smile. It was true. He could not find which Zhua Mo was the real one. But, did he need to know which one was real? All the anger and humiliation that had accumulated in his heart was like molten lava flowing inside his body, burning his body, pain covering his entire body. His body became a strange red color as though he was made from boiling red metal. The specialty of Fort Chao, fiery scripture, had reached its maximum. He wanted to use a method that no one could have any doubts about to win this battle. He wanted everyone to shut their mouths. His legs spread out slightly. Lowering his head, the gigantic fireball that was burning as it floated beside him suddenly bounced towards the sky. The spectators couldn't help but raise their heads, their eyes tightly fixed on the soaring fireball. They all knew what was coming was Chao Ao's full frontal attack. Seriousness came onto Wei Xing's face. He could feel the astounding power contained in that fireball. At his side, Xiaogua and Li Yingfeng paled. Before, they had thought about the gap in power between the two people, but the confidence that Zhua Mo had displayed had made them feel that the gap was not as big as they thought. But now, they found that the gap was even bigger than they had imagined. In the sky far away, 2 people silently floated in the air and watched the fight. Shimi is that confident in Zhua Mo? Gu Rongping looked at the match and said slowly, Fort Chao's fiery hammer, strong on the offensive and weak on the defense, but the power isn't bad. If he gets to complete it, even I would have some trouble. Su was floating beside him and said faintly, we'll know when they finish. Gu Rongping gave a light chuckle, it seems that Shimmy has a lot of confidence in him. Oh, then I can have high expectations. Su didn't respond. Yan Mingzi and the others were very nervous right now. Hu Shan directly asked Wang Shixiang, what's the situation? Before he finished, Chowan shouted. Boom! His fisted hands suddenly crashed together in front of his chest. As his fists hit each other, the fireball in the sky suddenly exploded, turning into countless fist-sized fireballs, howling as they started falling down. The fire rain hammer of fiery hammer. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. From nothingness, from low to high, the howls swept the field like a flood. Even the ground was trembling slightly. The Xiuzha that had been looking at Chowan like they were looking like a jade suddenly changed expressions. The light in Wei Sheng's eyes grew as he stared at the field, the tendons in his hand protruding uncontrollably. The sect leaders on the Lucky Cloud didn't have the attention to talk now, their eyes locked on the field. Shi Fengrong's expression changed slightly. Zhou Mo should not meet this move head-on. A hint of remorse flashed through Pei Yuanran's eyes. His original intention had been for Zhou Mo to have some experience. He hadn't thought that Zhou Mo would land in such a dangerous situation. They had only thought that Zhou Mo had comprehended sword essence when he had been in Zhuji, so they hadn't opposed him when Zhou Mo went to practice things like ling farming and dan making. If they had known that this guy had comprehended sword essence when he was in Lianqi. If such a good sprout like this one was ruined on his hands, how could he face the ancestral masters? Pei Yuanran's expression couldn't help but change slightly. The faces of the others were also abnormally ugly. A cold light flashed through Xian Yan's eyes. His right hand hidden in his sleeve, at some unknown time, was gripping a little sword. Only the sect leader of Ling Ying's sect had a joyful expression. Just as everyone was intimidated by Chao An's fire rain hammer, and lost their ability to talk, Wang Shixiang suddenly raised his head, the light in his eyes shining, as he couldn't stop himself from shouting, that's not right. Yan Mingzi and the others were startled awake by Wang Shixiang's shout but didn't have the attention to spare to ask. Their eyes couldn't bear to move aside. At some unknown time, a patch of faint golden mist had rose. Those lights that were like golden sand, under the explosive rain of fire that was like a volcanic explosion, was so weak and inconspicuous. Gold surge formation. The mist that was like golden sand was all pure golden energy. Gold surge formation was a commonly seen gold element formation. It could nurture the vigorous gold energy. These vigorous gold energies didn't have much power. Most of the time, it was activated before casting a gold element spell. It could increase the power of a gold element spell. Did he want to use a gold element spell? The spectators couldn't help but shake their heads. The attributes of gold were vigor, strength and breakage. Along with fire, it could deal the greatest damage out of the 5 elements. But of the gold element spells that a Zhuji could use, they really couldn't think of one that could stop Chao An's fire rain hammer. Some perceptive Xiuzha that were also knowledgeable in formations found an abnormality. Was this gold surge formation 2nd or 3rd grade? Such a big patch of golden mist, it didn't seem like something a 2nd grade gold surge formation could form. But if it was a 3rd grade gold surge formation, it could not form in such a short amount of time. Seeing the fire hammer in the sky about to land, this patch of golden mist changed again. At this time, no one was concerned with the change in the gold mist. Everyone was closely watching the 5 Zhou Mo on the field. They wanted to see how Zhou Mo would respond. That's not correct. Wang Shixiang's expression was frozen as he stared at the field, unconsciously muttering. Without noticing, his face was full of sweat and his eyes were full of deep disbelief. Chapter 125 Final Kill 1, 2, 3, 4. How many formation discs had Zuemo thrown out? Everyone only saw the sky filled with formation discs like rain. Only Wang Shixiang had been silently counting inside. The 5 Zuemo had been furiously throwing formation discs at an astounding rate, but an illusion was just an illusion. The illusions created with a multiple ghost shadows seal below 5th grade were intangible. They were just a ball of light. Therefore, only the formation discs thrown out by the real person were real formation discs. Wang Shixiang, face full of sweat, was full of admiration towards Zuemo to the point of kneeling. It was rare that the illusions were so realistic, but to have illusions that could throw out formation discs, the person's consciousness was terrifying. Wang Shixiang could not count how many formation discs had been truly thrown out. The rate at which each Zuemo had been throwing formation discs was different. He couldn't tell which one was the real one. But he knew that Zuemo had at least thrown out 7 formation discs. The fight had reached its climax, and Wang Shixiang felt that hiding under that expressionless zombie face was an extremely terrifying cunning. The spherical ball of fire that was howling as it came down quickly changed. Hammer metamorphosis. This was an extremely important transformation of the fiery hammer. Almost every move needed to undergo hammer metamorphosis. After the fire turned into a hammer, the power would greatly increase. In normal moves, the time it took to complete the change was extremely short and hard to detect. It was only for powerful moves like Fire Rain Hammer that the metamorphosis of the hammer was clear enough for people to detect. When the howling fireball all turned into the fire hammer, the entire battleground would be flattened. At this moment a change suddenly occurred. 3 blue chains suddenly leapt around the red Chao An's feet, like 3 blue snakes that had been waiting for a long time, and tangled around Chao An. Unable to defend, Chao An was tightly tied. 3rd grade, Dragon Tying Formation. Shocked shouts instantly sounded in the crowd. This change had been too sudden without a hint of warning. However, many people were still shaking their head. Was this what Zuemo had been doing? The Dragon Tying Formation had been one of the finer formations that Zuemo had purchased. Not many people recognized it. But in the eyes of these Ningmai, they could roughly detect the power of this Dragon Tying Formation. From what they saw, the power of the Dragon Tying Formation was good, but it was impossible to tie down Chao An with this. It would only take Chao An a few breaths to break free. Crack crack, Wang Shixiang couldn't help but fist his hands. A blush came onto his sweaty face. Only he guessed that Zuemo's counterattack was starting. Chao An was enraged. Under the eyes of everyone, he had actually been tied down by a Zhuji Xiuzhe. His head rang. The fire inside his chest could not be suppressed. His hair stood on end, his eyes widening angrily, his expression extremely twisted. Go die. All the Ling power in his body furiously headed for the 3 blue chains on his body. A bright red fire appeared on his body, and he truly became a fire person. The deep red fire fiercely burned the blue chains on his body. The blue chains, at a speed visible to the naked eye, dramatically shrunk. The spectators couldn't help but sigh. The difference in power was too great. For Zhuji cultivators, the power of the Dragon Tying Formation was very strong, but it was not enough for a Ningmai. It might have tied Chao An down for a while, but Zuemo lacked a move that could finish him off. He basically could not do anything to Chao An. Zuemo couldn't even near the flame that was on Chao An's body. Only Wang Shixiang believed this was the horn of counterattack. There definitely was a change hidden in here. But where was that change? He suddenly found that in that great patch of golden sand, at some unknown time, there was the addition of countless water energies. A ball of faint water mist, carrying countless sparkling golden lights. It was extremely beautiful. Such thick water energy. Such an evident change obviously could not be missed by the spectators. Those that were familiar with formations instantly recognized it as the water-gathering formation. But the water energy that had been gathered far surpassed a second-grade water-gathering formation. Those Shouja that had deeper knowledge of formations instantly reacted. Gold births water. His gold surge formation is aiding the water gathering formation. It's a chain formation. No. There must have been an earth formation before. Earth aids the gold formation. It's a 3-chain formation. Heavens. 3-chain formation. 3-chain formation. He knows how to do a 3-chain formation. Gasps of shock instantly sounded among the crowd. This was the first time, up until now, that so many people gasped with shock at Zuo. Wang Shixiang silently fisted his hands even more. He didn't feel happy that his guess had been right at this moment. His eyes were full of panic. Faster, faster. The howling fireball rain had just reached Zuo's head. No matter how much assistance and traps he had put down before, he could not dodge this move. A pity for the 3-chain, someone said that, and the surroundings instantly became silent. With Zuo's cultivation, no matter what, they could not stop this fire rain hammer. Suddenly, all 5 Zuo stopped and simultaneously looked at the sky. Zuo's vision instantly darkened. The fireball descended from the sky, carrying an intimidating presence, unable to be dodged. Li Yingfeng and Xiaoguo's faces were bloodless. When the fireball flew closer, that terrifying presence made one unable to find the courage to face it. Shixiang. Xiaoguo's body uncontrollably trembled. Wei Sheng's eyes suddenly lit up. Changheng suddenly straightened his body. Oh. Gu Rongping was slightly surprised, little bit interesting. A light flashed through Zuo's eyes. His eyes were tightly fixed on the nearing fire rain covering the sky. The fireball grew larger in front of his eyes with astounding speed. He didn't move at all. He stood with his face looking at the sky, not moving a sliver. The fireball had a long tail, just like a meteor. But, they were still shaped spherically. It hadn't turned into a hammer. Golden light suddenly rose inside the field. A gigantic formation suddenly appeared. Zuo was at the center of the formation. At the same time, the jade pendant at his waist suddenly lit up. 2 formations, big and small, but completely the same, appeared in front of everyone's eyes. Double chain streaming fire core manipulation. The hands of the 5 Zuo in the field suddenly moved simultaneously. Zuo was under great pressure at the center of the formation. He could feel all the power and changes that were happening in the formation. He had never felt it was so easy before. It was like his hands were greased. He didn't need to especially control it, and those incomparably complex finger motions streamed out of his hands. Opposite the flow of his finger movements, his body clearly was struggling, like he was weighed down with something heavy, slightly trembling. Poof 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 poof. The 4 illusions disappeared. At this time, Zuo had no more concentration to control those 4 illusions. He was enduring pressure that he had never endured before. From far away, one could clearly see the tendons in Zuo's forehead bulging like earthworms. Control fire. He was using the most normal method to control fire. Taking advantage of Chao and being tied up and having weakened his control of the fire rain hammer, before the fireballs could turn to a hammer, taking advantage of the double chain streaming fire core manipulation formation to increase his control over fire, to resolve this move. Such a smart child. Tian Songzi praised from the lucky cloud. The faces of the other sect leaders were full of jealousy. At this time, Pei Yuan ran and the others did not have time to be smug. They were nervously looking at the battle. All of the spectators were dumbstruck. No one had thought Zuo would use such an incredible method to resolve a move that others thought was far out of his limits. It was just the most common fire. Zuo locked his jaw and told himself repeatedly. His consciousness was reaching into every corner, crawling around the fireballs above his head. The finger motions changed according to the feelings passed on through his consciousness. Even though he had the streaming fire core manipulation formation to help him, even though Chao An's control over the rain of fire was weakened, even though it had not metamorphosed into the hammer, but it still was not something that Zhuo Mo could control. However, Zhuo Mo didn't want to control it at all. Open! Zhuo Mo bellowed. His voice seemed to have come out of his chest, suffocated yet deep. The rain of fire above his head suddenly moved towards two sides, revealing a slim crack. The sunlight streamed down through the crack. On the shaded ground, a path of light suddenly appeared. A ruler-straight path of light. At this end of the path was Zhuo Mo. At the other end, it was Chaoan. And in the middle was that dense water energy that carried dots of gold light. Suddenly, for some unknown reason, when this path of light appeared, everyone that was watching had one thought: the final move. All the setup, all the traps, they followed and intercrossed and were so surprising. After such careful setup for the move, how could it not be the final kill? Zhuo Mo's finger movements changed. That ball of water energy in the middle suddenly started to pour with rain. Little art of cloud and rain. Little art of cloud and rain. The people that had been waiting for an ultimate attack were dazed. Though many people hadn't recognized the finger motions and formations that had came up previously, there was no one who did not recognize the little art of cloud and rain that Zhuo Mo had just cast. No one noticed that Zhuo Mo had cast little art of cloud and rain in such a short amount of time. Everyone's first response was, why was it little art of cloud and rain? Just as everyone was shocked, the water drop sword appeared in Zhuo Mo's hands. All the noise of the surroundings completely disappeared. In Zhuo Mo's eyes, there was only that ball of cloud and rain. Under his feet was the 5 primary Ling replenishing formation. It had just barely managed to top up the Ling power in his body. Charge! In his heart, Zhuo Mo shouted to himself. The water drop sword was tilted downward at his waist. Trotting in little steps, as the wind travel boots lit up, as he brushed past the fire rain beside him, he slowly sped up. All the Ling power in his body were flooding towards the water drop sword. Chaoan was very angry, more angry than he had ever been before. Originally, he had hoped to use a grand and explosive move to end this farce, and to prove his power. But everything was ruined. Now, even if he won, this damn zombie's performance was enough for people to talk about. The center of the conversation would be this zombie, and him. The flames on his body became even hotter. The blue chains that had been struggling finally could not endure it anymore and turned to dust. He raised his bright red eyes. There was one voice inside his heart. Die. In front of him, the cloud that was raining seemed to be changing. Immediately after, a figure rushed through the mist. The moment he came out, the white mist turned back to gold. All the water energy had disappeared. When he saw the person that rushed out was Zhuo Mo, Chaoan had a fierce smile. But when his eyes landed on Zhuo Mo's waist, his eyes suddenly widened. The water drop sword that Zhuo Mo was holding on his side had turned into a water sword, a gigantic water sword that was 1 zhang long like a flame. When he had passed by the cloud, all of the water energy had been absorbed onto the sword. In the midst of the fire rain, a transparent sword of water. That was Zhuo Mo's final and ultimate kill. Li water burning heavens. Chapter 126 Cross-examination. Boom boom boom. The sound of explosions rang out. The battlefield turned into a sea of fire. The deep red flames were several zhang high as they spat and danced. The two people that were enveloped in the fire could not be seen. Suddenly, in the middle of the sea of fire, several snowflakes floated out. A blurry figure appeared out of the sea of fire. He walked step by step out. The blurry figure became more solid. Who was it? Everyone couldn't help but stretch their necks and stop breathing. Even the dumbest person knew the one walking out was the winner of the battle. The rain of fire that had landed at the end had blocked everyone's vision. The image that had been burned in their eyes had been that gigantic flame-like sword made out of water, moving from bottom to top, slicing towards Chowan. Did he hit it? What was the result? It seemed to be time for everything to be revealed. The black figure coming out of the sea of fire was even more solid. He finally reached the border of the sea of fire. He didn't stop and stepped forward. A dark golden bare-footed figure, slightly burnt black, stepped out of the sea of fire. The sky was clear and the warm sunlight reached the ground. The weather of Sky Moon Jia was pleasant. Even though the rain was plentiful, but sunny days were the majority in the year. Dongfu, located on the mountain, was abnormally busy. The Xiuzhou were coming and going, on swords or flying, or riding ling beasts, or controlling talismans as they gathered here from all around. At Wukong Mountain, not far away from Dongfu, completely bare, Zhou Mo was soaking in the medicinal tub, only his head let out. He occasionally would hiss and inhale. Even though he had won this time, but he had been seriously injured. When he had walked out of the sea of fire, he had fainted. When he opened his eyes, he found that he was soaking in the medicinal liquid. Beside the tub, a sound tablet was placed. The light flowed on the jade disc of the sound tablet. This was something Zhou Mo had begged Xiaoguo to find for him. He was quickly pulled to the content of the sound tablet broadcast. Even though the matches of the past 2 days were extremely good, but it had to be said that they cannot compare to the first match. It really makes me unable to have interest. Master Su, what do you think? True. I feel the same. The spells of the past 2 days were varied, but there was nothing as astounding as Zhou Mo's display in the first match. However, after analyzing it, there are many reasons why everyone has such a deep impression of Zhou Mo and Chao En's fight. Exactly. A classic fight naturally needs some reasons it could be called classic. Like the gigantic difference in the two's power, and the unique use of formation discs and formations by Zhou Mo etc., they are all reasons this fight will be classic. In this fight, Zhou Mo's accomplishments with formations and formation discs is the topic that everyone has discussed the most. The professions see the technique, the amateurs the spectacle. I don't know anything about formations at all. Master Su, you are an expert in this field and definitely saw more than I did. Come, explain it to me. I'm really not that skilled. In reality, I was present at the fight and it gave me a great shock. It might be because I'm very interested in formations. I was greatly stimulated by how Zhou Mo used formations and formation discs. Many people are asking the same question, how many formation discs did Zhou Mo really throw out? Yes. I've been wanting to ask this question. If I hadn't seen it wrong, it should be 11 formation discs. That many? The first one he threw out was the Path Confusion formation disc. After that, the formation discs he threw out included the Earth Ling formation, the Gold Surge formation, the Water Gathering formation. Those 3 formed a 3-chain formation. Everyone should still remember the 3 blue chains that tied up Chowan. I checked afterwards. It is the Dragon Tying formation. Not a bad formation. The gold formation that appeared last was the Streaming Fire Core Manipulation formation. It formed a double chain with the Streaming Fire Core Manipulation formation on Zhou Mo's jade pendant at his waist. That was just 6 formation discs. Those 6 discs had been meticulously planned. But where Zhou Mo was smart was not just that. He had 5 formation discs with 5 primary Ling replenishing formations. 5 primary Ling replenishing formations. Right. Zhou Mo only has Zhuji cultivation in the end. His Ling power is not as deep as Chowan by far, so he needed to replenish Ling power. What everyone should admire is that he had thrown the 5 formation discs into very specific places. Basically, any place that he could step into, is within the area of the 5 primary Ling replenishing formation. Inside the medicinal tub, Zhou Mo was full of admiration. He didn't know who this Master Su was, but all his arrangements had been clearly seen by this person. He couldn't help but be a little smug. To hear someone praise him from the sound tablet, that feeling, it wasn't just good. The pain from the medicinal fluid burrowing into his body seemed to lessen. When he thought of the jincture that he had made this time, his soul was flying. You are very smug. Shi Feng Rong said icily, face cold inside the tub. Zhou Mo shrunk his head. He had almost forgotten that he was being cross-examined right now. The sect leader, Xian Yen Shibua, Yen Le Shibua, and Master, were standing in a row in front of his medicinal tub and were staring at him. This disciple doesn't dare, he said carefully. Doesn't dare? What don't you dare do? Shi Feng Rong's voice suddenly rose as she demanded, say, what don't you dare do? Zhou Mo saw the situation was bad. Master was truly angry, but he didn't know where he had done something wrong, so he could only make noises. Seeing Zhou Mo making noise, the fire in Shi Feng Rong's heart rose. Look how docile you appear. You are the slipperiest and ruffian-like person in all the disciples. If I don't sort you out, as your master, I'll get lead around in circles by you. Zhou Mo didn't understand anything at all. Inside, he was even more certain he had done something wrong. But there were too many things that he had done that was not allowed. His master was pointing at his nose and scolding, but he didn't know which one it was. To have provoked the stoic master into scolding like this, what he had done was probably major. Liang Feng and Xiaoguo didn't dare to breathe from the side. However, by the end, they were suppressing their laughter. Cough. Only when Shi Feng Rong had pretty much vented did Pei Yuan Ran stand out. Xiao Mo, you had comprehended sword essence in Lianqi, but why didn't you tell us? The sect leader's voice was gentle and friendly, extremely warm, but soaking in the boiling medicinal fluid, Zhou Mo couldn't help but shudder. Truthfully, Zhou Mo wasn't that afraid of Master. Master had a cold face but a warm heart. Even though she had been sternly scolding him, but she was truly concerned for him. Out of the 4 elders, the one Zhou Mo was frightened of the most was the sect leader. The sect leader always spoke moderately, was friendly and warm, but for some reason, Zhou Mo was always terrified of the sect leader that had brought him back. So it was comprehending sword essence when he was in Lianqi. Zhou Mo relaxed slightly. There shouldn't be a problem with that matter. This disciple felt at the time that since the sword essence couldn't make jincture, it wasn't as practical as being a ling plant farmer. Zhou Mo deliberately stammered out. The enormous yard was completely silent. Hearing Zhou Mo's answer, even though the 4 had cultivations of Jin Dan, they were completely dumbstruck. The 4 stared at each other, not knowing to laugh or cry. Xiaoguo, Liang Feng and the others were trying their best to not laugh so much that their bodies were shuddering. Actually, for a long time, that had been Zhou Mo's true thoughts. So he was extremely natural when he said it. Everyone knew what Zhou Mo was normally like. A person that dared to risk death to go to Ling Ying's sect to steal talismans. It was normal for him to say something like this. Make jincture. You only know how to make jincture. One day, you'll be smashed to death by jincture. Hearing that Zhou Mo had wasted his talents for such a ridiculous reason, Shi Feng Rong was furious. It'll be worth it to be smashed by jincture, Zhou Mo reflexively muttered. The moment it came out, he knew it was bad. Master and the others had very keen hearing. Wasn't he finding trouble for himself? Once one was injured, their self-control was lowered. Shi Feng Rong was so angered by Zhou Mo that her entire body shook, the finger that she pointed at him shaking. Yan Li's face was full of helplessness. Such a money-obsessed disciple, but his talent was so good. Only Pei Yuan Ran's expression was normal. His tone was still very warm. Oh, if I remember correctly, you only learned Li Water Sword scripture after you entered Juji. Then, before that, what sword essence had you comprehended? Zhou Mo instantly was alarmed. Damn it! How did he forget that? Li Water Sword scripture was a scripture that he had gone to the records room to get after he entered Juji. He hadn't thought that the sect leader, who usually did not act, would have noticed him so much that he was clear when he had cultivated the Li Water Sword scripture. If the sect leader found Pu Yao, Zhuo Mo was extremely panicked. He felt more nervous than he had ever been before, his heart up to his throat. He swallowed and said hesitantly, "It sure was Ice Dragon Sword Essence." This was something he certainly would not be able to conceal. If he lied, and the sect leader made him show it, he would definitely slip up. 2 dots of cold light suddenly lit up in Xian Yan's half-lidded eyes. The other 3 had not expected Zhuo Mo's answer. Even Pei Yuan ran stilled in shock. "Oh, take it out for your Shirbo to see," Yan Lu said hurriedly. As expected, Zhuo Mo suppressed the terror in his heart and sent out a tidal sword essence. It was extremely weak, but the iciness contained in it was undoubtedly the Ice Dragon Sword Essence. "Where did you learn it?" Sect leader Pei Yuan ran stared with blazing eyes at Zhuo Mo. The other 3 had reacted by now. Xian Yan had never taught Zhuo Mo the Ice Dragon Sword Essence and the records had only been opened not long ago. How did Zhuo Mo encounter the Ice Dragon Sword scripture when he was in Lianqi? The 4 people's eyes were blinding. Zhuo Mo felt cold up his spine, his limbs freezing. Damn it, how could he perfect this lie? Zhuo Mo's silence made the other 4 people's faces ugly. The tense atmosphere made Li Yingfeng and the others pale. Secretly stealing and learning a spell, it was a crime punished by death in all sects. No one would have mercy for someone that did so. Just as Zhuo Mo felt he had reached the end of the road and it was helpless, he was suddenly inspired. He stammered, "It was the night that eldest Shixiang entered Juji. I saw Shirbo's ice dragon." Shock appeared on the 4 people's faces, chasing away the darkness before. Only now did they remember that, on that night, in order to turn away the Xiuzha that came to watch, Xian Yan had revealed his famed Ice Dragon Sword scripture. "You comprehended it after one look that night?" The usually calm Xian Yan finally couldn't stop himself. Yes, Zhuo Mo only felt relief as he escaped from death. He shook as he spoke. Joy and slight guilt came onto Shi Fengrong's face. There was only shock on the other 3 people's faces, deep shock. Even the usually calm sect leader was so shocked he was speechless. Just one look, and he comprehended the sword essence. That talent at cultivating the sword. Chapter 127, Everyone is Troubled. Wukong Hall. "What do all of you think?" Pei Yuan ran asked the other people. Shi Fengrong was the first to speak. "Other than second Shixiang, no one else knows Ice Dragon Sword scripture. The Jade Scroll had not been released before. With Zhuo Mo's cultivation, even if he got it, he could not have read it," she said. She was the first person to speak up for Zhuo Mo. Her protective intentions were evident. Pei Yuan ran smiled and said, "Shimmy, don't be nervous. You can't just steal and learn Ice Dragon Sword scripture, even if you wanted to. I just saw that the boy was not obedient and wanted to scare him." Xian Yan suddenly said, "It's a pity." Yan Lu hurriedly asked, "What's a pity?" The other 2 elders also looked at Xian Yan. He must have comprehended the sword essence on his own. It has the beginnings of the tide. If he had kept going like that, it would not be hard to reach the creation of the dragon. It is a pity that he merged the Li Water Sword essence with it. It looks like there is more transformations, but in reality, it has caused the sword essence to become impure. It was rare that Xian Yan spoke so much. The expressions of the 3 people changed dramatically. Shitty means that Zhuo Mo has ruined it. Pei Yuan ran, who never showed his emotions, had a terrible expression at the moment. In reality, he knew that he didn't need to ask that question. They were all sword Xiao and understood the result of an impure sword essence. Xian Yan didn't speak, but the 3 people that were familiar with him understood. The 3 of them became silent. All 4 of them were in a terrible mood. It would have been alright if they didn't know Zuomo's potential, but Zuomo's talent was so amazing, yet he would not be able to progress further on the Ice Dragon Sword scripture. For the 4 people who placed heavy importance on the legacy of the sect, it was a heavy blow. Pei Yuanran said dejectedly, "This is my fault. I was remiss in paying attention to him." The hearts of the other 3 were also unwell. Of the 4, Shi Fengrong felt the worst. She had just been happy about Zuomo's talent, but in the turn of an eye, she was informed that Zuomo would not progress further on the Ice Dragon Sword scripture. "Xixiang, is there really no way?" She bit her lips and looked at Xian Yen. Unless he could remake his sword essence to purify it. However, what he would receive would be a new sword essence, not Li Water sword essence, nor Ice Dragon. How to progress that, we cannot teach him, Xian Yen said heavily. Wukong Hall descended into silence. Just as everyone was blaming themselves, Xian Yen suddenly opened, since he could comprehend Ice Dragon sword essence on his own, he is very talented. It is not out of the question that he could remake his sword essence. Shi Fengrong suddenly lifted her head, eyes lighting up as the disappointment left her face. Does Xixiang have a way? Pei Yuanran and Yen Lu were also uplifted. They all knew that Xian Yen was not talkative usually, but if he spoke of his own initiative, he would definitely have a way. Their eyes looked towards Xian Yen, waiting for him to continue. If he could understand more sword scriptures, with his talent, it should not be difficult for him to remake his sword essence. He just needs to be taught more sword scriptures, Xian Yen said solemnly. However, what is it? Yen Lu couldn't stop himself from asking. He doesn't seem to be interested in cultivating the sword, Xian Yen said. The 3 people stared at each other. They had been concerned about the problem of Zuomo's talent and had missed the most important question. Zuomo was exceptionally talented, but he was the epitome of the frivolous disciple. His only habit was making jingshi. As to cultivating the sword, when had he ever taken the sword seriously? But this person with no ambitions about the sword had a talent others would admire. Xian Yan's words struck the other 3 elders dumb. If Zuomo didn't want to practice the sword, they were concerned for no reason. The 4 of them were all sword shio and knew very well how hard it was to cultivate the sword. At higher levels, other than difficulty, there was also danger. If the person's own resolve was not strong enough, they basically could not achieve anything. In other words, unless Zuomo wanted to learn the sword himself, they could not force him to. The 3 couldn't help but thinking how Zuomo saying he wanted to be smashed to death by jingshi. Pei Yuanran suddenly felt a headache come up. What a troublesome youth. Of course, Zuomo didn't know that the sect leader was having a headache over him. He was soaking in the medicinal tub, celebrating for having overcome a calamity. The MO matrix on his body had not attracted the attention of the elders. He felt surprised and extremely lucky. When he inspected the MO matrix on his body, he was shocked to find that, at some unknown time, the MO matrix had hidden away under his skin. It was alright. The MO matrix hidden underneath his skin greedily absorbed the medicinal power, quickly fixing Zuomo's body. He found that a benefit of the MO matrix was that it could quickly absorb Ling power and medicinal power, and continuously strengthen his body. The fact that his Vajra Profound Sutra progressed so quickly was directly connected to his MO matrix. After soaking for a few days in the medicine, Zuomo found that his benefits in the sect had risen greatly. He was familiar with dan making now and could recognize the general components of the medicinal fluid. He found the medicinal liquid he was soaked in contained many precious Ling medicines. Zuomo's mind automatically converted it to jingshi and jumped in fright. Each basin was really expensive. This didn't seem like the style of the sect. Zuomo muttered inside, but he quickly threw the question to the back of his mind because he thought about jingshi. This time, he had earned a lot. For him, 300 pieces of 3rd-grade jingshi was not a small sum. He had dared to put down so much, not because he had enough confidence, but because he had decided to spend all the jingshi before Puya woke up. If Puya woke up, he wouldn't get one piece of Jingshi no matter how much he had. The odds of Zhuo winning had been 1 to 300. Zhuo had wagered 300 pieces of third-grade Jingshi. In other words, his earnings was 90,000 pieces of third-grade Jingshi. Holy fuck. Zhuo felt countless Jingshi were floating above his head. His soul was floating. 90,000 pieces of third-grade Jingshi. One fourth-grade Jingshi was worth 500 pieces of third-grade Jingshi, then it was 180 pieces of fourth-grade Jingshi. Heavens! This was a gigantic sum. Supposedly, when Li Yingfeng had gone to take out this enormous sum, she had asked eldest Xixiang to protect her the whole way. Luckily, Zhuo had told her to spread the wagers out, so no one had been plotting after it. But the worker at the casino that Wei Sheng had gone to wager at had a special expression when he saw Wei Sheng. When Li Yingfeng handed the Jingshi to Zhuo, her hands were shaking. What Kunlun introductory jade scrolls? All of that was thrown to the back of Zhuo's mind. 180 pieces of fourth-grade Jingshi. What couldn't he buy? Holding such a great sum, Zhuo did not need to fight at all. Wasn't it just the Kunlun introductory jade scroll? He only needed to notice who had picked this jade scroll and buy it from him. 180 pieces of fourth-grade Jingshi. Not just the Kunlun beginner jade scroll. Zhuo felt that even if it was a normal Kunlun fourth-grade spell, he could buy it. He made a lot. A lot. He had never been so wealthy before. At this time, Zhuo had just become an upstart, wanting to run to Dongfu immediately to start shopping. Possessing such a great sum, he could almost sweep clean all the talisman and material shops in Dongfu. Along with him, the casinos had also earned a lot. They were wishing that a battle like that would occur a few times each day. In Wukong Hall, a cloud had formed. It's over. Yan Li's face was full of helplessness. Now the boy has made such a big amount of Jingshi. Not just cultivating the sword, I'm suspicious that he would just start eating and waiting for death from now on. How about we take the Jingshi from him? Shi Fengrong said hatefully. She hated Zhuo's lack of ambition and grieved over her unluckiness. That's not proper. Pei Yuanran shook his head. He earned it properly. If we take it away, how would we be different from robbers? By that time, we might force him into another sect. The three were frightened. Right, any sect would compete for a disciple that was as talented as Zhuo. If nothing else, if they crossed the line, it would be reasonable that they could force Zhuo away. Even a strong person like Tian Songzi who was on good relations with Wukong's sword sect wouldn't give up on him. What should we do now? Shi Fengrong's face was full of worry. Before, they had been discussing the possibility of bribing Zhuo since he was so miserly. But Zhuo had received such a fortune. Even Pei Yuanran and the others were jealous of such a large amount of Jingshi. Without a doubt, Zhuo had become the richest person in Wukong's sword sect. To bribe him with Wukong's sword sect's thin assets, it was not possible. Pei Yuanran couldn't help but start rubbing his throbbing brow again. In the next few days, Zhuo floated as he walked. It was like he was stepping in cotton. There was only one question in his mind. How to spend this much Jingshi? However, he didn't have time to consider that problem anymore because it was time for Wei Sheng Xixiang's match. Wei Sheng Xixiang's opponent was a sword shio called Zuolin. He was a strong sword shio, halfway up in the various rankings. Having had a taste of gambling, Zhuo wanted to pull Li Yingfeng along to make some bets. But a frightened Li Yingfeng shook her head. She felt that her heart couldn't tolerate wagering like this. Without any other way, Zhuo could only take Xiaoguo along to go bet at the big casinos. Zhuo had become famous in Dongfu. The employees at the casino instantly recognized him. After going to 2 casinos, Zhuo could only let Xiaoguo go make the bets. If Zhuo was asked who he was most confident in, then it definitely would be Wei Sheng Xixiang. So he did not hesitate in his wagering. To avoid being detected, he was very subdued. However, he pulled Xiaoguo along to bet at every casino in Dongfu, all for Wei Xing Shixiang winning. However, the payout rate at every casino for Wei Xing to win was very low. Everyone felt that Wei Xing would win. Since the casinos were opened by those local factions, they all knew that Wei Xing had caused an apparition when he entered Juji. As expected, Wei Xing Shixiang crisply defeated Zhuo Lin and won. In this match, people had noticed that Wei Xing was clearly more powerful than his opponent. After this fight, Wei Xing was rocketed up in the rankings, easily getting into the top 10 and became a candidate for winning. Even though the payout was not high, Zhuo Mo had invested a lot. In this match, he had made a little profit of 10 pieces of 4th grade Jingshi. As expected, if one had Jingshi, it was easier to make Jingshi. Zhuo Mo sighed. Wei Xing Shixiang had won and he had no further interest in the following matches. Even though his wounds had not fully healed, he was still trying to think of ways to spend the Jingshi. Chapter 128 The 100 Treasure Flying Pavilion for Zhuo Mo. The question in front of him was an extremely serious one, to spend this enormous amount of Jingshi. In his perspective, it was not outrageous to label it a serious problem. If he hadn't spent all of the Jingshi before Pu Yao woke up, then he definitely wouldn't get a single piece. His original intentions when he had bet the original amount was because he didn't want the 300 pieces of 3rd grade Jingshi to land in Pu Yao's hand. This was great now. The situation hadn't changed and he needed to find a way to spend even more Jingshi. He definitely had to spend it before Pu Yao woke up. If such a large sum of Jingshi ended up in Pu Yao's hands, Zhuo Mo felt that he would go crazy. To avoid the worst-case scenario, Zhuo Mo decided to act immediately. However, before he could leave the mountain gates, he was called by the sect leader to Wukong Hall. Recently, he had been too flashy. It was better to be a bit more careful. Zhuo Mo decided to be more low-key. If he angered the sect leader and the others, he wouldn't have easy days. Xiao Mo. The sect leader raised a teacup and took a sip, saying slowly, "I heard you do not want to attend the next fight?" Sect leader, it's not that this disciple doesn't want to, but is unable to. See, this disciple's wounds have not healed. Even though the next opponent is unknown, but it will definitely be a Ningmai expert, and the match will be unwinnable. My wounds would be aggrieved, and leave behind hidden weaknesses for future cultivation. This disciple feels that the sword test conference is just to gain some experience. This disciple has learned a lot this time. If this disciple gets hurt in order to win, and damages the base, wouldn't that be doing more harm than good? Zhuo Mo said with a thick face. The sect leader had a smiling expression as he looked at Zhuo Mo. Zhuo Mo instantly had a bad feeling. You have thought about the situation. Not bad, not bad. However, things have changed. One competitor had left due to an emergency, so there will be one person who will draw a bye. Elder Tian Songzi admired your performance last time very much and has decided to give the bye to you. You have to perform well to not fail the hopes of Elder Tian Songzi. As to the wounds you have, don't worry, your master wouldn't bear for you to fight with wounds. Zhuo Mo instantly froze. He still needed to attend the competition. Wasn't it already known to be a loss? Other people only saw his dazzle and success in his match with Chowan. What they didn't know was how much he had prepared for that. Even his luck had been extremely good in order for him to achieve victory. Through the information that Fu Jin had found on Chowan before the match, he had found Chao An's weakness. He also fully used the wagering to place enormous pressure on Chowan. He had used everything he could think about, he had really put all his effort into scheming, just so he could barely make the victory. The gap between Zhuji and Ningmai was still gigantic. If it was any other competitor, he would have lost. Other than the killing moves like the Yin fire bead, which was not suited to being used in public, he had done everything that he could. The sect leader wanted him to keep attending the competition. What did he have left to use to compete? He felt his mind was a bit stuck. Did the sect leader really think that he could defeat Ningmai like he was cutting vegetables? He shouldn't. Zhuemo raised his head slightly to glance at the sect leader and instantly shook his head inside. Not in any way did the sect leader seem like such an idiot. Just as he was thinking, he heard the sect leader say with a smile, "Go prepare well." Zhuemo dejectedly left Wukong Hall. For a long while, he couldn't focus. Bye. This kind of thing happened. Just as he was dazing away on Silly Bird's back, he suddenly heard Pu Yao's voice, "Give me 5 yin beads." This was definitely the voice that Zhuemo didn't want to hear the most. Consequently, his body suddenly froze when he heard it. When did this guy wake up? However, he quickly responded. Pu Yao's voice was very rushed. He clearly was in desperate need of the yin beads. Without a second word, he took out 5 yin beads to shove to Pu Yao. Pu Yao, having obtained the yin beads, instantly disappeared. Only now did Zhuemo feel his heart pumping hard. Damn it, Pu Yao was going to wake soon. No way. He needed to be quicker. Zhuemo felt as though there was a fire below his but as he frantically urged Silly Bird to move. He could feel his heartbeat continuously increasing in speed, his mouth dry. 190 pieces of 4th grade Jingshi. Before the competition, he had never even seen a 4th grade Jingshi before, much less 190 pieces of 4th grade Jingshi. When he thought that this gigantic fortune might not belong to him, Zhuemo felt terrible. With a stronger desire to spend the Jingshi, Zhuemo came to Dongfu again. This time, he didn't wander around on the ground. He headed straight for the finest floating market in Dongfu, the 100 Treasure Flying Pavilion. The 100 Treasures Island was the finest market in Dongfu and what it sold was the most expensive and highest quality items that could be bought in Dongfu. Every talisman that was sold here was the finest of the finest. The raw materials that it sold were all rare items. The 100 Treasure Flying Pavilion was forged from a small mountain peak. The reason that it could always float in the air and never needed to land was due to the jinji that were on it. There had never been anyone that made trouble at the 100 Treasure Flying Pavilion, not even Jindan experts. This was the first time Zhuemo came to the 100 Treasure Flying Pavilion. If he didn't have 190 pieces of 4th grade Jingshi on him, he definitely wouldn't have the bravery to come to such a high-end store. The mountain was not big, only about 70 or so mu. It was extremely beautiful, all kinds of ling grasses and flowers planted, as the ling music flowed. Zhuemo didn't really know much about the ling music, but the ling grasses and flowers really frightened him, who was familiar with dan making. Fuck. Any stalk of ling grass and flower in here was a rare specimen that Zhuemo had only seen on the jade scrolls. 4th grade Antenaria reed, 4th grade Nightmare Mushroom, 4th grade Red Fire Lotus. They didn't need to put on any airs. Those 4th and 5th grade ling plants were just planted there. If the customers that came in did not have full purses, they would have to be careful when they lifted their feet in fears of stepping on a plant. They couldn't afford to pay the price. A place like the 100 Treasure Flying Pavilion never had to worry it would be too crowded. When Zhuemo arrived, there was only one guest inside. The person that received Zhuemo was a storekeeper wearing a gold-embroidered black robe. His eyes were very keen. When he saw Zhuemo, he enthusiastically came over. "Hey, isn't this Mr. Zhua? Such an honor to have you as a customer. Mr. Zhua, your match really helped us Dongfu gain some honor. That was a good fight. TSK, 3 chain, I was really shocked when I saw it. Receiving you today, it is this one's good fortune." The storekeeper's voice was warm but not fawning. His words touched Zhuemo's pride but didn't exaggerate. Even the volume was controlled at an appropriate level, and wouldn't disturb the customer that was browsing through the talismans not far away. What shocked Zhuemo even more was that this friendly-looking storekeeper was a Ningmai. At this time, Zhuemo couldn't help but look at the other shopkeeper. As expected, also in Ningmai. There wasn't just the 2 shopkeepers. There were 2 more shopkeepers waiting by the side, also Ningmai cultivation. Ningmai cultivators used as shopkeepers, this was enough to shock Zuo. He thought about the matches going on below, the Ningmai Shouja fighting back and forth, extremely grand. Yet on the 100 treasure flying pavilion, the same Ningmai level Shouja were only shopkeepers. He wondered who was the owner of the 100 treasure flying pavilion. The other must have a very big background. There was one benefit to Zuo's zombie face. No matter what he was thinking inside, it would never show on the surface. I came to see if there was something suited for me. Due to the other's cultivation, Zuo was also very polite. Oh, then look around. If you see something you like, this one can explain more. The shopkeeper smiled as he said. He was not too warm but not cold. With just a look, Zuo's eyes blurred. Right now, he did own many good things, but other than the jade scroll at his waist that could barely be put in the 100 treasure flying pavilion, none of the other things were comparable. These were all good things. Good things. Zuo swallowed continuously, his eyes lit up, wanting to sweep all the talismans on the shelves into his purse. However, when he saw the prices marked on the items, it was like a bucket of cold water was poured over his head. This flying sword uses the deep ocean water soul crystals from 10,000 miles under the surface. Each water soul crystal is above 4th grade and was made by a famous master. This flying sword is made from 7 swords and can be arranged in many ways. The Big Dipper on the body of the swords can easily set the swords to become the Big Dipper sword formation. If it is in the hands of those who are skilled in formations such as you, Mr. Zuo, it would become even more powerful. Zuo looked at the price, 600 pieces of 4th grade Jingshi. His little heart trembled and he hurriedly looked at another item. This is a sky cotton woven robe. It is woven out of 16,000 strands of complete ice sky silk. The ice sky silk is extremely strong and hard to break with a flying sword, and it can automatically absorb Ling energy from the surroundings. There are 7 formations on there, each with different effects, all of them useful. Also, this sky cotton woven robe is extremely strong in defense. We have done specialized testing, price, 500 pieces of 4th grade Jingshi. Zuo left without raising his head. Zuo walked around the different shelves as he scanned through superficially. Each talisman was so good, but the price of each talisman made him feel hopeless. By the end, he was completely numb, and just looked at the price first. The shopkeeper did not hurry him and was not impatient. He showed extreme professionalism. Zuo suddenly saw an item priced at 100 pieces of 4th grade Jingshi. He couldn't help but stop in his stride. A ring that was like a circle of metal laid there silently. Noticing Zuo's gaze, the shopkeeper introduced dutifully, this dimensional ring is half a failure. The forger had originally wanted to forge a 4th grade dimensional ring but failed in the end. This dimensional ring is slightly bigger than normal 3rd grade dimensional rings, but it is smaller than 4th grade dimensional rings. Because the owner is familiar with the forger, this dimensional ring was placed to sell here. Dimensional ring. Glee rushed out of Zuo's heart. He hadn't thought that the 100 treasures flying pavilion would sell dimensional rings. The so-called dimensional rings were storage talismans. The 100 treasure pouch at his waist was a similar talisman that could store and transport items. However, the dimensional ring was a higher level storage talisman than the 100 treasure pouch. It wasn't just that it could contain more items, but the items stored would not increase the weight. That was where it was much better than a 100 treasure pouch. However, it was much harder to make a dimensional ring than a 100 treasure pouch. It was hard to find one on the market and the price never dropped. If it wasn't for his unexpected windfall, Zuo didn't know how long it would take before he could afford a dimensional ring. The dimensional ring was an extremely useful talisman. Zuo almost didn't need to think and took out the Jingshi, I'll buy it. Chapter 129, 5-Colored Pagodas. Zuo couldn't let go of the dimensional ring once he had it in his hands. Mr. Zuo really has good eyes. The space inside this dimensional ring is 9 square zhang, more than 2 times the area of a normal third-grade dimensional ring, but the price is only 30% more expensive than a third-grade dimensional ring. Stored inside the dimensional ring, there's no rotting or decay. It will be as fresh as it was even 100 years later. It is easy to take items out. The mind only has to move, and it will enter the palm. The shopkeeper praised and then handed Zhuo Mo a jade scroll. This jade scroll has some of the special jinji for dimensional rings. This shop gives them for free. Mr. Zhuo is really a promising youth. This store has opened for a long time, yet Mr. Zhuo is the first customer to have a dimensional ring in Zhuji. It really was a good item. Zhuo Mo threw everything from the 100 treasures pouch into the dimensional ring, and felt his body become light. His 100 treasures pouch had been holding a huge mountain of items. If it wasn't that he had made slight progress with the Vajra Profound Sutra, he would have been crushed under the weight of the items. Now that it was all in the dimensional ring, he couldn't feel any weight. The feeling was too good. A 9 square zhang area was empty. His large pile of items only took up an extremely small corner. The gigantic space was enough to put countless formation discs. What medicine seal style? With the dimensional ring, then it would be the true medicine seal style. Even though he had known before, but he still sighed at the contrast between the dimensional ring and the 100 treasures pouch. No wonder it was so expensive. One piece of jingshi, one kind of item. What Zhuo Mo was especially satisfied with was the appearance of this dimensional ring was plain. It looked like a normal metal circle and was unattractive to the eye. If one didn't already know, they wouldn't ever think that this nondescript metal circle was a dimensional ring worth 104th grade jingshi. Zhuo Mo knew that his cultivation was low. If he was too flashy, then that was no different than asking for death. Dong Fu might look orderly on the surface, but things like killing people for their treasures, and people suddenly disappearing were common occurrences. People were moved by wealth, people died for wealth, birds died for food. This was the same no matter the place. He didn't want to lose his little life for a dimensional ring. The plain appearance of the dimensional ring was well suited to his mentality. It was worth spending 100 pieces of 4th grade jingshi. Extremely satisfied, Zhuo Mo thought about the remaining 90 pieces of jingshi. Let's continue. The shopkeeper was slightly surprised at the wealth Zhuo Mo had. This was the first time he had seen a Zhuji Xiuzhe spend 100 pieces of 4th grade jingshi without batting an eye. He didn't know that Zhuo Mo was racing against time with Pu Yao. If Pu Yao didn't exist, he would have tightly gripped onto the 100 pieces of 4th grade jingshi and certainly couldn't bear to buy the dimensional ring. But right now, the jingshi would only be his if he spent it. Even though Pu Yao would always offer things like spells in what he called an exchange, but thinking about the things that Pu Yao gave, Zhuo Mo was so upset he wanted to spit blood. No matter if it was the embryonic breathing spiritual cultivation of the first time, or the Mo matrix, and Yao seed later, all of them had side effects. As for things like fragrance knowledge, he wanted to kill someone. It wasn't a crime to spend. If he didn't spend, he definitely would cry. Zhuo Mo kept walking forward. His eyes landed on a 5-colored pagoda. This 5-colored pagoda was made up of 5 levels, each level a different color. Familiar with the 5 elements, Zhuo Mo instantly recognized it as a 5-element talisman. Each level represented an element of the 5 elements. This 5-element pagoda was made by a roaming Xiu. Originally, this roaming Xiu had intended to make a talisman that could increase control over the 5 elements, but his cultivation went astray and his spirit was extinguished. This unfinished talisman was sold to this store by his family. The thought behind this 5-element pagoda is extremely clever. The 5 levels of the tower might not be made from the best materials, but it would have been hard to gather all 5. It is a pity that Dong Fu is dominated by Sword Xiu and not many cultivate the 5 elements, which is why none have asked about this talisman. I heard that Mr. Zhuo has a side profession of ling farming. This 5-color pagoda is very suited for you. If you are willing, this store would also give to you the spells to forge the 5-color pagoda for free. It is the jade scroll that the original owner of the 5-color pagoda left. Zuo looked at the price, 50 pieces of 4th grade jingsher. He couldn't help but be tempted. The item is good, but the price. Hearing this, the shopkeeper said apologetically, I'm sorry. It's not that this one is unwilling, but the store does not bargain. The other might have said it politely, but the tone was resolute. It looked like he really couldn't bargain, Zuo muttered inside. But he was greatly tempted by the 5-colored pagoda. He could only say, could you take it out for me to see? No problem. The shopkeeper crisply took out the 5-colored pagoda and handed it to Zuo. Once the 5-colored pagoda came into Zuo's hands, he felt the lively 5-element energies. He started out as a ling plant farmer and was extremely sensitive to the 5 elements. Even the sword scriptures that he had practiced afterwards had clear inclinations towards the 5 elements. The levels arranged from the top of the pagoda to the base were gold, wood, water, fire, and earth. When ling power was channeled into the pagoda instantly shone with 5-colored light. Zuo felt as though he was holding an extremely pure ball of 5-element energy. His mind moved as he silently casted little art of cloud and rain. Then he felt the moisture surrounding him gather in his hand. So quick. Zuo was very shocked. It was twice as fast as when he casted the little art of cloud and rain by himself. Such a powerful talisman. Zuo instantly realized the value of this talisman. Maybe, in the hands of another person, this talisman would not be very useful, but in his hands, it would be very effective. This 5-colored pagoda is suited to you. A voice suddenly came from behind him. Hearing this, Zuo turned around. At some unknown time, someone had been standing behind him without his knowledge. It was him. Zuo couldn't help but still. In front of him was a person wearing a black gauze hat. It was the guy that had came to him to cut the cold magnet. This person called Su had mysterious origins. He was very strong and had easily won in the last few matches. He was ranked in the top 10 of all the rankings. He had also made a wager with Chaoan, which pushed Chaoan into dangerous straits. He could be considered to have helped Zuo out. Of course, Zuo didn't have any relationship with him, so Zuo had no reason to think the other had wagered just to help him out. I'll buy it for you. Su said shortly, you just have to help me with something. The shopkeeper beside them perceptibly moved to one side, not disturbing their conversation. Zuo was extremely wary. He shook his head, saying, no need, I can buy it myself. 50 pieces of 4th grade jingsher was not a small amount. Converted, it was 25,000 3rd grade jingsher. A favor whose payment reached 50 pieces of 4th grade jingsher. Even thinking with his feet, Zuo knew the favor wasn't an easy one. Adding on this, Su took out a jade bottle, Fort Chao's intense fire dan. 36 of them. Help me forge something. Forge something. Zuo's heart rested slightly. What Ge is most afraid of is fighting and killing. Oh, wait, thinking about his history of almost getting killed when he had processed the inky black lotus seed, he hurriedly asked, forge what? Forge the cold magnet into sword billets. Su said. That's not possible. Zuo said decisively, that thing is 4th grade. It took all my power just to cut it. I don't have the power to forge it into sword billets. You can do it. Su's voice still was unaffected, you could process the inky black lotus seed. Adding on this 5-colored pagoda, you can forge it. It would have been better if Su hadn't mentioned the inky black lotus seed. Once it was mentioned, the anger in Zuo's heart erupted. If this bastard in front of him hadn't spread the information, then that business wouldn't have come looking for him. Gu had almost lost his little life. I will also help you get into the top 10. Su's light words instantly dissipated the fire in Zuo's heart. Zuo's heart moved. He felt out with a question, then what do I do for the second round? You're the buy for the second round. Su said. Zhuo was secretly shocked. This guy did have some skill to be able to know such secret information. He had just found out from the sect leader that he was the buy, and this person in front of him actually knew as well. The other's offer tempted him. Pu Yao was most likely going to wake up soon. If Pu Yao woke up, the Jingshi would instantly change possession, then his idea of buying the Kunlun preliminary formation Jade Scroll was not realistic. If he wanted to get that Jade Scroll, then he had to go through the competition. There would be 100 people that would attend the last no-rules competition. Even though all 100 people would get a prize, but the further back he was ranked, the less the chance he would get the Jade Scroll. But Zhuo kept on feeling the other's offer was not so simple. Tell me how to forge the sword billets. He first decided to find out more. Carve a formation on each billet with dying flowing moon. There are 4 formations in total. Su said. Dying flowing moon. Zhuo's head shook like a rattle drum. Not possible, not possible. Dying flowing moon isn't a material I can use at this moment. He was not being humble. Even though dying flowing moon was a 3rd-grade material, but it was a rare one. It had extremely special properties and was truly a high-end material. They might all be 3rd grade, but there would be great differences. The so-called grades were, in reality, an extremely vague concept. Sometimes, it referred to a horizontal ranking, while other times a vertical ranking. This vague categorization system was not because cultivators were not rigorous but due to the complexity of the attributes of many materials. For example, the stalagmite fire. His was a 2nd-grade fire seed. This was the horizontal ranking, because it held the attributes of a fire seed. There were many types of stalagmite fire. If it was nurtured for a long period of time in a place with denser Ling energy, it would transform into another kind of fire, cold purple fire, and if it kept on going, it would form yet another fire, yin wave fire. The stalagmite fire was 2nd grade, the cold purple fire was 3rd grade, the yin wave fire was 4th grade. Cultivators would see them as a wholly different species, because they were of different grades, and they would have different attributes, but were in fact the same fire source. Some materials would increase in quality but keep its appearance and fall under the vertical rankings. For example, fire dragon grass. 3rd grade fire dragon grass and 4th grade fire dragon grass might be different in terms of the Ling energy it contained and the color of its fruit, but it was still very easy to identify it as a fire dragon grass. Dying flowing moon belonged to the 2nd type. The so-called 3rd grade dying flowing moon referred to how in all of the dying flowing moon, it was ranked in the 3rd to last species. In reality, the 2nd situation occurred far more frequently than the 1st situation. This kind of categorization had formed over thousands of years, according to convention. Dying flowing moon was a truly high-end material. It was extremely difficult to gather and to process. It certainly wasn't something a Zhuji Xiuzhe like Zhuo could forge. Zhuo suspected that he couldn't even process 1st and 2nd grade dying flowing moon, much less the 3rd grade dying flowing moon. He couldn't take the business. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.